Ethan Cole had 24 hours to become a husband he'd never planned to be. Not for love, not for himself, but for a child he'd only just met. Across a rain-soaked diner counter, a desperate waitress named Rachel Moore was about to lose her daughter to a system that measured worth in bank statements and wedding rings. Ethan had neither wealth nor romance to offer. What he had was a house with empty bedrooms, a heart that understood loss, and the unshakable conviction that no child should be ripped from a parent who loved them. Sometimes strangers become family in the space between one breath and the next. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels, and if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. The rain came down like accusations that Tuesday night, relentless and cold, drumming against the roof of Mel's diner with the kind of persistence that made people question their choices. Route 29 stretched dark and empty beyond the windows, interrupted only by the occasional sweep of headlights from travelers who'd rather be anywhere else. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed with mechanical indifference, casting everything in that peculiar yellowish glow that made even coffee look unappetizing. Ethan Cole sat in the corner booth, the same one he always chose when he brought Lucy here, far enough from the kitchen noise, close enough to the emergency exit. Old habits from another life, ones he couldn't quite shake, even though the dangers now were different, simpler. He watched his daughter arrange French fries into elaborate patterns on her plate, her small fingers precise with the kind of focus only 5-year-olds could muster for tasks adults had long ago deemed pointless. "Daddy, this one's a castle," Lucy announced, holding up a particularly long fry. "And this one's the Princess Tower." "That's so." Ethan's voice carried the texture of gravel and exhaustion, softened only by the reflexive gentleness he reserved solely for her. 12 hours on a construction site had left his shoulders aching and his hands raw, but he smiled anyway. This was their ritual, their Tuesday night escape from the small house where everything still whispered of her mother's absence. "The princess needs rescue," Lucy continued, completely absorbed in her narrative. "There's a dragon." "Always is." Ethan took a sip of coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. He didn't mind. Coffee was coffee, and sleep was something that happened to other people. "What's the dragon want?" "All the French fries." Lucy's logic was unassailable. "That's why he's mean." Ethan reached across the table and stole a fry from the dragon's hoard, making her giggle. The sound was water in a desert, light in a cave. All the cliches that grief had taught him were actually true. After Sarah died, he'd thought he understood loss. Turned out you never stop learning its lessons. The diner held maybe 6 other souls that night, scattered across vinyl booths like survivors of some unnamed catastrophe. A trucker hunched over pie at the counter, an elderly couple sharing silence and tea, a businessman whose tie hung loose, defeated by the day. And at the far end of the counter, nearly hidden behind the coffee station, a woman whose shoulders carried the kind of tension that came from holding the world together with increasingly fragile string. Ethan noticed her because he'd learned to notice when people were drowning. You developed that sense when you'd done time underwater yourself. She was maybe 30, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the shift neat and was now barely holding on. Her uniform, generic diner standard, polyester blend that repelled stains and dignity in equal measure, bore the name tag Rachel. She moved through her work with mechanical efficiency, refilling coffee, clearing plates, smiling at customers with a warmth that never quite reached her eyes. Ethan had seen her here before. Mel's Diner wasn't the kind of place you went for the cuisine. You went because it was open late, because the coffee was hot, if not good, because sometimes you needed to be around people without actually engaging with them. He and Lucy came every Tuesday after his shift, a routine they'd established 6 months after Sarah's funeral when he'd realized that sitting at their kitchen table felt like drowning. Rachel had served them a few times. She always asked Lucy about school, always brought extra whipped cream for her hot chocolate without being asked. Good waitress. Professional. Kept whatever battles she was fighting well hidden. Until tonight. Ethan was paying the check when it happened. One moment Rachel was clearing table 4, her movements precise and practiced. The next, she'd stopped mid-motion, a plate suspended in her hand, her entire body gone rigid. The plate hit the counter with a clatter that made everyone look up. I can't. Her voice cracked, barely audible. I can't do this anymore. Mel, the owner, emerged from the kitchen wiping his hands on his apron, concern creasing his weathered face. Rachel, you okay? She wasn't. That much was obvious to anyone with eyes and the willingness to use them. Her hand went to her mouth as if she could physically stop the breakdown, but some things couldn't be swallowed back down. The tears came sudden and total, the kind that happened when you'd been holding everything in until the muscles simply gave out. I'm sorry, she gasped, stumbling toward the back. I'm so sorry, She didn't make it to the employee area. Instead, she collapsed onto the stool at the far end of the counter, her face in her hands, her whole body shaking with sobs that sounded like they'd been building for years. The diner fell into that particular kind of silence that happens when strangers witness private pain. The trucker studied his pie with sudden intense focus. The couple looked away. The businessman checked his phone. Lucy tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Daddy, why is the nice lady crying? Don't know, sweetheart. But something in his chest pulled tight, recognition sparking in a place he thought had gone numb. Mel approached Rachel carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. Rachel, talk to me. What happened? She couldn't speak, could only shake her head while her shoulders heaved. Mel looked around helplessly, clearly out of his depth. Someone get her water and tissues, lots of tissues. The businessman stood to leave, probably unwilling to stick around for the messy parts of other people's lives. Ethan didn't blame him. Most people weren't. He counted out bills for his check, included a decent tip, started to gather Lucy's jacket. Then Rachel spoke. Tomorrow. The word came out broken, barely coherent through the crying. Noon tomorrow. If I don't have it by noon tomorrow, I lose her. Ethan's hands stopped moving. Lose who, honey? Mel's voice was gentle, grandfatherly. What happens at noon? Custody hearing. Rachel dragged air into her lungs like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Final determination. Marcus, my ex, he's got lawyers, money, everything. And the judge said, if I can't prove stable housing, stable marriage, stable life by tomorrow at noon, she couldn't finish, didn't need to. Your daughter, Mel said quietly. Rachel nodded, a movement so small it was almost not there. Emma, she's 7. She's everything. And tomorrow they're going to take her away from me because I work too many shifts at a diner and live in a studio apartment and don't have a husband to make me look respectable enough. The words hung in the air like smoke, bitter and choking. Ethan stood very still, Lucy's jacket in his hands, something old and fierce rising in his chest. That's not right, Lucy whispered, looking up at him with those eyes that were too much like her mother's. That's not fair. No, it wasn't. Ethan knew exactly how unfair family court could be, how it reduced human beings to checkboxes and income brackets, how it measured a parent's worth in everything except the only thing that actually mattered: love. He'd been through it himself right after Sarah died. Her parents had tried to take Lucy, convinced that a construction worker with PTSD and a modest house in a working-class neighborhood couldn't possibly raise a child as well as they could in their gated community with their country club connections. The case had taken 8 months, cost him every penny of his savings, and aged him a decade. He'd won, barely, because he'd owned his house outright, and because the judge had seen something in him that Sarah's parents had refused to acknowledge, that he was Lucy's father, and he'd burned the whole world down before he let her go. But he'd won because he had a house, because he could prove stability in the language courts understood. I tried everything, Rachel was saying, her voice raw. I picked up extra shifts, saved every dollar, but rent in this area is insane, and childcare costs more than I make, and Marcus knows people, has connections. His lawyers tore apart everything, my job history, my apartment, the fact that I'm single. They made me sound like I was neglecting her when I'm killing myself every day just to keep us afloat. That's criminal, Mel muttered. Using custody laws like that, that's just criminal. It's legal. Rachel's laugh was acid. Perfectly legal. And tomorrow at noon, unless I can prove I'm married and have stable housing, the judge is awarding primary custody to Marcus. I'll get her every other weekend if I'm lucky, if I can afford a car to drive to his gated community to pick her up. Ethan should have left, should have taken Lucy and gone home and let this tragedy unfold the way tragedies do, inevitably, cruelly, to other people. He had his own struggles, his own daughter to protect. Getting involved in someone else's disaster was the kind of thing that led to complications he couldn't afford. But he was already moving toward the counter, Lucy's hand in his, before his brain caught up to his feet. "You need a husband and a house," he heard himself say, "by noon tomorrow." Rachel's head jerked up. Her face was blotchy, mascara smeared, eyes red and swollen. She looked at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "What?" Ethan set Lucy's jacket down on the counter. His heart was hammering, adrenaline flooding his system the way it used to before missions, before jumps, before the kinds of decisions that changed everything. "That's what you need, right? To prove to the court? Married? Stable housing." Yes, but I don't..." Rachel shook her head, confusion cutting through the tears. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Ethan Cole." He gestured to Lucy. "This is my daughter, Lucy. We come here Tuesdays. You always remember the whipped cream." "Okay." Rachel wiped at her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I'm sorry you had to see me fall apart like this. I'll be fine. I just need to..." "I own a house," Ethan said. 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, been there 8 years, paid off, stable. The diner had gone completely silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Everyone was listening, even the people pretending not to. Rachel stared at him. "I don't understand. You need married, you need stable housing. I got the housing, and a marriage license is just paperwork." Ethan kept his voice level, matter of fact, the way he'd learned to speak when emotions were too big to let show. "I'm proposing a solution." "You're..." Rachel stood up, backing away slightly. "You're a stranger. I don't even know you." "No, you don't." Ethan didn't move closer, didn't crowd her. "But I know what family court looks like. I know how it measures people. And I know what it's like to fight for your kid against a system that doesn't give a damn about what actually matters. You can't just..." Rachel's voice rose. "This is insane. You can't just offer to marry someone because they're having a crisis in a diner." "Not offering marriage," Ethan clarified. "Offering an address, a stable home environment, legal guardian presence. Whatever boxes the court needs checked." "Why?" The question came out sharp, defensive. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't know my daughter. This could be some kind of scam or..." "It's not. You have no reason to help me." "Yes, I do." Ethan glanced down at Lucy, who was watching the exchange with wide, serious eyes. "I have a daughter, and I know what it would do to her if someone tried to take her away from me. I know what it would do to me." Rachel's expression cracked, fresh tears spilling. "This is crazy." "Yeah, it is." Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. "But so is losing your kid because you can't afford the right zip code or the right relationship status. So which kind of crazy you want to live with?" Mel had been watching the whole exchange with his mouth slightly open. "Ethan, son, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but you can't just..." "Rachel, you can't seriously consider this. You don't know this man." "I know he tips decent and his daughter's well behaved," Rachel said, the comment coming out almost automatic, like her brain was still trying to process what was happening. "I know he's been coming here for months and never caused trouble. I know..." She stopped, shaking her head. "I don't know anything. This is insane." 24 hours, Ethan said quietly. "That's all you got, right? Till noon tomorrow?" "Yes, but then we don't have time for sane." He pulled out his wallet, extracted his driver's license, and set it on the counter. "Ethan Cole. That's my real name, real address. You can look me up, check my records, whatever you need. I got nothing to hide except a dead wife and a mountain of medical debt. I'm still paying off. House is mine, job steady, background's clean except for honorable discharge from the Army." Rachel picked up the license with trembling fingers, staring at it like it might contain answers. "This doesn't make sense. People don't do this. People don't just help strangers like this." "Most people don't," Ethan shrugged. "But most people haven't been where you are. I have. And I had help when I needed it, even though I didn't deserve it, even though I was too proud to ask. Someone told me once that you don't pay that kind of thing back. You pay it forward." "Who?" Rachel asked. "Who helped you?" "My wife's best friend. After Sarah died, when I was drowning, when her parents were trying to take Lucy. She showed up with casseroles and lawyers and refused to let me disappear into grief. She's gone now, moved to Seattle. But before she left, she told me that someday I'd see someone who needed what I could give. And when that happened, I should give it. No questions, no expectations, just give it. The truth settled over the counter between them, heavy and real. Lucy tugged on Ethan's hand. Is the nice lady going to lose her little girl, Daddy? Not if we can help it, sweetheart. Then we should help. Lucy's logic was, as always, unassailable. That's what we do. Rachel looked at Lucy, then at Ethan, then down at the driver's license in her hands. You're serious. You're actually serious about this. Dead serious. Ethan met her eyes, let her see he meant it. I got a house with empty bedrooms. I got time to go to a courthouse. I got nothing to lose and you got everything to lose. So yeah, I'm serious. There are conditions, Rachel said suddenly, her voice hardening with the kind of survival instinct that came from being cornered too many times. If, and this is a huge if I even consider this, there are conditions. Name them. Separate bedrooms, boundaries. This is legal only, nothing else. You don't touch me, you don't touch my daughter, you stay on your side of whatever line we draw. Agreed. I don't know you, I don't trust you. I'll have pepper spray. I'll have my phone on me at all times. And if you do anything at all that makes me uncomfortable, I'm gone and I'm calling the cops. Fair. I can't pay you. I don't have money for rent, for bills, for not asking for money. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Then what are you asking for? Ethan considered that. What was he asking for? He didn't know this woman, didn't owe her anything. In 24 hours, she could be gone from his life completely, just another stranger who'd passed through Mel's diner on a Tuesday night. But he remembered the hearing where the judge had looked at him with skepticism, measuring his worth in dollars and square footage and marital status. He remembered the feeling of being reduced to paperwork, of having love dismissed as insufficient evidence. He remembered Lucy's face when she'd asked, "Daddy, are Grandma and Grandpa taking me away?" And the way his heart had stopped beating for 3 full seconds. I'm asking you not to give up on your daughter, he said finally. That's all. Fight for her. Let me help you fight for her. And when it's over, when she's safe, we figure out the rest. The rest being what exactly? Whatever you need it to be. We stay married for however long the court requires to prove stability. 6 months? A year? Whatever. Then we file for divorce, go our separate ways. You keep your daughter, I keep my house. We both sleep at night knowing we did right by our kids. It was the simplest truth Ethan knew. You did right by the kids. Everything else was negotiable, but that was the line you didn't cross. Rachel stared at him for a long moment, tears still streaming down her face, her expression cycling through disbelief, hope, terror, and something that might have been the first fragile edge of trust. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard, she whispered. Yeah. I'd be insane to say yes. Probably. But if I say no, I lose Emma tomorrow. Yeah. The rain hammered against the windows. The coffee pot hissed on its burner. The trucker at the counter carefully counted out exact change for his pie. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clattered. Normal sounds in a normal diner on a normal night, except nothing about this was normal, and they all knew it. Rachel set the driver's license back on the counter, her hand shaking. If I do this, if I need to see the house first, tonight, I need to see where Emma would be living. I need to know it's safe, that it's real. Absolutely. And I need references. People who know you, who can vouch that you're not some kind of psychopath. Can give you 3, Ethan said. My foreman at the construction company, my neighbor Mrs. Chen, who watches Lucy sometimes, and the social worker who handled my custody case. The social worker? She's retired now, but she'll remember me. Probably still has my file. She can tell you I'm not a threat. Rachel nodded slowly, her mind clearly racing through scenarios, calculating risks, trying to find the trap in an offer that sounded too good to be true. Ethan understood. He'd have done the same. Trust was earned, not given, and definitely not handed over to strangers in diners at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But sometimes you ran out of time for caution. Okay, Rachel said, the word coming out like a prayer and a curse combined. Okay, show me the house. Mel stepped forward, his expression concerned. Rachel, honey, are you sure about this? I know you're desperate, but I'm past desperate, Mel. Rachel untied her apron with jerky movements. I'm at the end of the road and there's nothing but cliff beyond it. So yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I need to try this because trying is all I have left. She looked at Ethan, and he saw the steel beneath the tears, the core of strength that had kept her standing through whatever hell her ex-husband had put her through. This wasn't a woman who gave up easily. This was a fighter who'd been beaten down but hadn't stayed down. Your house, she said firmly. Show me. And it better be exactly what you say it is, Mr. Cole, because if you're lying, if this is some kind of sick game, it's not. Ethan picked up Lucy's jacket, helped her into it. It's just a house, nothing special, but it's mine. It's safe, and it's got space for 2 more if you need it. For how long? That was the question, wasn't it? How long did you keep up a charade before it became something else? How long did strangers play house before they forgot they were strangers? However long it takes, Ethan said. Rachel grabbed her purse from behind the counter, called to Mel that she was leaving early, family emergency. Mel looked like he wanted to argue, to talk her out of this madness, but something in her expression stopped him. You call me, he said instead. Tonight, you call me and let me know you're okay. And if you're not okay, you call the cops. Understand? I will. Rachel hugged him briefly, fiercely. Thank you for everything. Then she was following Ethan and Lucy out into the rain, into the parking lot where his truck sat under a broken streetlight, into a decision that would change all their lives in ways none of them could begin to predict. Ethan opened the passenger door for her, helped Lucy into her car seat in the back. Rachel climbed in slowly, her movements cautious, her body language screaming wariness. She kept her purse in her lap, her phone visible in her hand. Smart. Careful. Address is 22847 Maple Street, Ethan said as he started the engine. 15-minute drive from here. You want to text that to someone, have them track your location? That's fine by me. Rachel did exactly that, her fingers flying over her phone screen. Ethan caught a glimpse of the message. Going to 2847 Maple Street with man from diner. We'll call in 30 minutes. If you don't hear from me, call police. He didn't take offense. He'd have done the same in her position. The drive passed in near silence, broken only by the rhythm of windshield wipers and Lucy humming softly in the back seat. Rachel stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Ethan focused on the road, on the familiar turns that led home, and tried not to think too hard about what he'd just committed himself to. Married. By noon tomorrow. To a woman he'd spoken to maybe 5 times before tonight. Sarah would have called him insane. Then she would have helped him pull it off, because that's who she'd been. Someone who believed in doing the impossible when it was the right thing to do. Tell me about your daughter, Ethan said, breaking the silence. Emma. Rachel glanced at him, suspicious. Why? Because if we're going to convince a judge we're a family, I should probably know something about the kid I'm supposedly helping to raise. The logic was sound, but Rachel still hesitated, protecting her daughter even in description. Finally, she spoke. She's 7, 2nd grade, loves books and hates math. She's shy around new people, but talks nonstop once she trusts you. Her favorite color is purple. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up because she thinks all animals deserve to be healthy. Rachel's voice softened with love so profound it hurt to hear. She's the best thing I ever did. The only thing I got right. She sounds like a good kid. She's the best kid. Rachel's hands clenched around her phone. And Marcus is going to ruin her. He doesn't want her because he loves her. He wants her because it hurts me. Because he can't stand that I left him. That I chose a studio apartment in poverty over staying with him. He hurt you. Ethan's voice went flat, dangerous in a way he usually kept buried. Not physically. Not in ways that leave marks you can photograph for evidence. Rachel stared out the window. But yes, he hurt me. Controlled me. Made me feel like I was worthless. Like I couldn't survive without him. And when I proved him wrong, when I left anyway, he decided to destroy me by taking the only thing I have left. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd met men like Marcus. Hell, he'd served with some of them. The ones who confused control with strength, who mistook cruelty for power. The ones who believed that breaking people made them important. He won't win, Ethan said quietly. You don't know that. No. But I know I'm good at making sure people like him don't get what they want. Rachel looked at him, really looked. And Ethan wondered what she saw. A scarred construction worker with calloused hands and too many ghosts? A stranger making promises he might not be able to keep? Or something else? Someone who understood that sometimes you fought battles that weren't yours because fighting was the only thing that made sense? Here, Ethan said, turning onto Maple Street. This is it. The house sat mid-block, modest and unassuming in the rain. Pale blue siding, white trim, a small front porch with 2 chairs that never got used. The lawn needed mowing, the gutters needed cleaning, but it was solid, real, exactly what he'd promised. Ethan pulled into the driveway, killed the engine. It's not much. It's a house. Rachel's voice was thick with something that might have been tears, or might have been hope, or might have been both. It's more than I've been able to give her in 2 years. They got out of the truck, Lucy already half asleep against Ethan's shoulder as he carried her toward the front door. Rachel followed, her phone still clutched like a weapon, her eyes taking in every detail. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and sawdust, lived in but not dirty. The living room held a couch, a television, a scattered pile of Lucy's toys. The kitchen was small but functional, dishes drying in the rack. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it was clean. It was safe. It was home. 3 bedrooms upstairs, Ethan said quietly, Lucy's weight warm against his chest. Mine, Lucy's, and the guest room that's mostly storage right now. 1 bathroom, washer and dryer in the basement. Yard out back needs work, but it's fenced. Rachel walked through the space like she was measuring it against some internal checklist. She opened cabinets, checked locks on windows, ran her hand along the banister, looking for traps, looking for lies. The guest room, she said finally. That would be Emma's? If you want. Or she could share with Lucy. They're close in age. They don't know each other. Not yet. Ethan shifted Lucy's weight, headed for the stairs. But kids adapt faster than adults. Give them a week, they'll probably be best friends or worst enemies. Either way, they'll figure it out. He carried Lucy to her room, tucked her into bed still in her clothes because she was already gone, dreaming of French fry castles and dragons. When he came back downstairs, Rachel was standing in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, looking small and lost. I don't understand why you're doing this, she said without turning around. Ethan considered lying, considered giving her some noble reason that would make him sound like less of a mess. But Rachel deserved truth, especially now. My wife died 3 years ago, he said. Cancer. We had 6 months from diagnosis to funeral, and I spent every minute of it trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. After she was gone, her parents tried to take Lucy. Said I was an unfit father because I had PTSD, because I worked construction, because I didn't fit their idea of what raising a child should look like. Rachel turned to face him. I won the case, Ethan continued. Barely. But I remember what it felt like to sit in that courtroom and have lawyers dissect my life, my worth, my love for my daughter like it was evidence in a crime. I remember thinking that the system was supposed to protect kids, but all it did was measure parents against arbitrary standards that had nothing to do with actual parenting. So this is about guilt? No. Ethan met her eyes. This is about knowing what it costs to lose and refusing to let it happen to someone else when I can prevent it. That's all. No hidden agenda, no expectations beyond what we already agreed. The house settled around them, wood creaking, the furnace kicking on. Outside, the rain had finally begun to ease, tapering to a drizzle. Rachel pulled out her phone, checked the time. It's almost 11. The courthouse opens at 8. We need a marriage license. There's a 24-hour copy place downtown. We can get the application printed, fill it out, be there when they open. And then what? Then we get married, Ethan said simply. Courthouse ceremony, 5 minutes, done. Then we go to your hearing at noon and show the judge proof. Just like that. Just like that. Rachel laughed, a sound with no humor in it. This is insane. We're going to stand in front of a judge and swear we're married when we're practically strangers. You got a better plan? She didn't. They both knew it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Finally, Rachel nodded. Okay, let's do it. Let's get married and lie to the court and hope we don't get caught. Not lying about the important part, Ethan said. The part where you're a good mother and your daughter belongs with you. That's true. Everything else is just logistics. Logistics. Rachel repeated the word like it was foreign. Is that what we're calling this? You got a better word? Miracle, she whispered. Or disaster. I'm not sure which yet. Ethan grabbed his keys, his wallet, the folder where he kept important documents. Come on. We got paperwork to file and a kid to save. We can figure out which one this is later. They left the house together, stepping back out into the rain-soaked night. Two strangers bound by desperation and determination and the unshakable belief that children deserved better than what the world casually handed them. Behind them, Lucy slept peacefully, unaware that by morning she'd have a stepmother and a sister she'd never met. And ahead of them, tomorrow waited, with its courtrooms and judges and the cruel machinery of a system that measured love in signatures and addresses. But tonight, driving through empty streets toward a 24-hour copy shop, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years, purpose beyond simple survival. He was helping. He was fighting. He was refusing to let cruelty win just because it wore the mask of legality. Rachel sat beside him, silent and scared and brave in ways she probably didn't recognize, about to marry a stranger to save her daughter. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like exactly the right kind of crazy. The 24-hour copy shop existed in that strange liminal space reserved for businesses that catered to emergencies and insomnia. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with aggressive brightness, fighting back the 2 a.m. darkness like it was a personal enemy. A bored college student behind the counter barely looked up from his phone as Ethan and Rachel walked in, rain-soaked and desperate, carrying the kind of determination that came from having run out of alternatives. We need to print a marriage license application, Rachel said, her voice steadier than it had been at the diner but still carrying that tremor of disbelief. For Virginia. The kid pointed toward a computer station without speaking, already back to scrolling through whatever occupied people at this hour. Ethan guided Rachel to the terminal, pulled up the state website, and together they stared at the form that would legally bind them to each other. Full legal name, Rachel read aloud, her finger hovering over the first blank field. Rachel Ann Moore. Ethan typed it in. Ethan James Cole. Date of birth? They filled in the information mechanically, reducing their lives to data points and checkboxes. Social security numbers, current addresses, previous marriages. Rachel left hers blank because technically she was still in the process of finalizing her divorce, a fact that made Ethan pause. Wait, he said, if you're not divorced yet. The divorce was finalized last month, Rachel interrupted. Legally, I'm single. Marcus made sure it went through fast because he thought it would hurt my custody case. Ironic, right? The thing he did to weaken me is the only reason this plan can work. Ethan nodded and kept typing. They reached the section about witnesses and marriage intentions, the part where the state asked if they were entering this union freely and without coercion. Rachel let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Are we? She asked. Entering freely? You're free to walk away right now, Ethan said quietly. No judgment, no guilt. You owe me nothing. Rachel's hands twisted together in her lap. But if I walk away, I lose Emma. Yeah. So it's not really free, is it? It's just choosing which cage has the better view. Ethan stopped typing, turned to face her fully. Listen to me. This isn't a cage. This is a tool, a means to an end. You're not trapped with me. You're protected by a legal agreement that gets you what you need and costs you nothing but time. There's a difference. Is there? Rachel's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. Because it feels like I'm trading one form of control for another. Marcus controlled me with fear and manipulation. You'd control me with what? Charity? Pity? Neither. Ethan's voice was firm. I'm offering partnership, temporary, practical, beneficial to both of us. You get stability for your custody case. I get... He paused, realizing he hadn't actually thought this through. What did he get? What? Rachel pressed. What do you get out of this, Ethan? Really? He could have lied, could have said something about tax benefits or household help or any number of practical reasons that would make this transaction seem reasonable. Instead, he told the truth. I get to sleep at night knowing I didn't stand by and watch a kid get ripped away from her mother over bureaucratic nonsense. That's all. That's enough. Rachel studied his face for a long moment, searching for deception, for angles, for the trap she was convinced had to exist. Ethan let her look. He had nothing to hide except scars and grief, and those were written all over him anyway. Finally, she nodded. Okay, let's finish this. They completed the application in silence, printed 3 copies, paid the college student who still hadn't made eye contact with them. Back in the truck, Rachel checked her phone and her face went pale. What? Ethan asked. Message from my lawyer. Marcus filed an emergency motion. He's claiming I've abandoned Emma, that I haven't been home in 2 days. Her voice shook with rage. I've been working double shifts to pay for the lawyer he's forcing me to need, and he's using that as evidence I'm a bad mother. Where's Emma now? With my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She watches Emma when I work nights. She's good to her, safe, but Rachel's breath hitched. But it looks bad. A 7-year-old staying with a neighbor instead of her mother. Marcus knows exactly what he's doing. Ethan pulled out his phone, typed quickly. Text your lawyer right now. Tell her by 8 a.m. you'll be at the courthouse with a marriage certificate and proof of stable housing. Tell her to be ready to file a counter motion showing changed circumstances. Will that work? It has to. Ethan started the engine. We're about to make it work. They drove to an all-night diner, different from Mel's, somewhere anonymous where they could sit and think and plan. Over bad coffee and toast neither of them ate, they constructed the story they'd tell the court. How did we meet? Rachel asked, pen hovering over a napkin where she'd started taking notes. The truth? Mel's diner. You were our regular waitress. How long have we been seeing each other? Ethan considered. 3 months? Long enough to be serious, short enough to explain why people don't know yet. Why did we get married so suddenly? Because we realized we didn't want to waste time. Because life's short, and when you know, you know. The words felt strange in his mouth, borrowed from a life he'd actually lived once with Sarah, but they sounded plausible, and that's what mattered. Rachel wrote it down, her handwriting shaky. What if they ask about Emma? About how she feels about this? We tell them the truth, that kids adapt, that we're taking it slow, that family is built not born. Ethan paused. Actually, Emma should probably meet Lucy before the hearing. They should be able to say they've met their new sibling. Rachel's head snapped up. You want to wake your daughter at 3 a.m. to introduce her to my daughter who she's never met, hours before we go lie to a judge. You got a better plan? The absurdity of it hit them both at once. They were sitting in a diner planning to wake children in the middle of the night to prepare them for a fraud that would become legal record. It was insane. It was necessary. It was both. She's going to have questions, Rachel said. Emma's smart. She'll want to know why suddenly she has a stepfather and a new house. So we tell her. Ethan met her eyes. We tell her that sometimes adults have to make hard choices to keep families together. We tell her that you fought for her, and this was the fight that worked. We don't lie to the kids about what matters. And what matters? That you love her, that you're not giving up, that this, he gestured between them, this arrangement is about protecting her, not replacing her father or pretending to be something we're not. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, we do this. We go get Emma, bring her to your house, introduce the girls, then at 8, we're at the courthouse. Then at noon, we're at family court showing the judge you've got exactly what she required. Just like that. Just like that. But it wasn't just like that, and they both knew it. Every step of this plan required things to go perfectly, required judges to accept their story, required children to adapt instantly to a reality that made no sense. The odds were terrible. The stakes were absolute. Rachel pulled out her phone, called her neighbor. The conversation was brief, apologetic, desperate. Yes, she knew it was the middle of the night. Yes, she needed to get Emma right now. No, everything was fine, better than fine. Everything was about to change. They drove to Rachel's apartment building in a neighborhood that spoke of struggle and survival, the kind of place where people worked 3 jobs and still couldn't get ahead, where broken playground equipment sat unfixed and graffiti bloomed on concrete walls like evidence of dreams deferred. Rachel's studio was on the 3rd floor of a building that had probably been nice in 1975, but had given up sometime around the turn of the century. Mrs. Patterson answered the door in a bathrobe, her gray hair in curlers, suspicion and concern warring on her face. She looked at Ethan, then at Rachel, then back at Ethan. "Who's this?" "This is Ethan Cole," Rachel said, her voice stronger now, like she was practicing the truth she'd have to sell in a few hours. "My husband." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows shot up. "You're what now?" "We got married tonight." "Well, we're getting married in a few hours. At the courthouse." Rachel was talking too fast, the words tumbling over each other. "He has a house, Mrs. Patterson. A real house with bedrooms and a yard. And I need to take Emma there now because the custody hearing is at noon, and this is how we win." The older woman studied Ethan with the kind of shrewd assessment that came from years of watching neighbors' dramas unfold. "You got ID." Ethan handed over his driver's license without argument. Mrs. Patterson examined it, then looked at him hard. "You hurt that girl or her baby. I will find you. I don't care how big you are or what kind of training you got. I will make your life a misery." "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said, meaning it. "Rachel, you sure about this? You don't have to—" "I have to save my daughter," Rachel interrupted, "and this is how I do it. Is Emma asleep?" Mrs. Patterson stepped aside, letting them into her small apartment that smelled like cats and potpourri. In the living room, curled up on the couch under a faded quilt, a little girl slept with the kind of complete abandon only children managed. Dark hair spread across the pillow, one hand clutching a stuffed rabbit, her face peaceful in a way that made Ethan's chest tight. This was what they were fighting for. This moment of innocent sleep, of childhood that should be protected from adult wars. Rachel knelt beside the couch, smoothed hair back from her daughter's face. "Emma, sweetheart, wake up, baby." Emma stirred, murmured something unintelligible, tried to burrow deeper into sleep. "Emma, it's Mama. I need you to wake up now." Brown eyes blinked open, confused and sleepy. "Mama, it's dark." "I know, baby, but we need to go somewhere. Remember how I told you we had to see the judge tomorrow about where you'd live?" Emma nodded, suddenly more awake, fear creeping into her expression. "Am I going to Daddy's house?" "No." Rachel's voice was fierce. "No, baby, you're coming home with me. To our new home. I have so much to tell you." Emma sat up, clutching her rabbit, and that's when she noticed Ethan standing in the doorway. Her eyes went wide. "Who's that?" Rachel took a breath. "Emma, this is Ethan. He's going to help us. He has a house where we can stay, and he has a daughter just a little younger than you named Lucy." "Is he your boyfriend?" Emma's question was cautious, the way kids asked when they'd learned that new adults in Mama's life could mean complications. Rachel glanced at Ethan, and he saw her making the calculation, deciding how much truth a 7-year-old could handle at 3:30 in the morning. "He's my husband, sweetheart. We got married so that we could all live together. So the judge would see we have a good home." Emma looked at Ethan, then at her mother, processing this with the serious concentration children brought to information that didn't make sense. "But you just met him." "I've known him a little while," Rachel said, the lie coming smoother now. "And sometimes grown-ups have to make quick decisions to protect the people they love. I love you more than anything in the whole world, Emma. Everything I'm doing is to make sure we can stay together." "Does Daddy know?" "He will soon." Emma clutched her rabbit tighter. "Will he be mad?" "Probably," Rachel admitted, because lying to kids about emotions was worse than useless. "But his mad doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you're safe and loved and home with me." "And with him?" Emma pointed at Ethan. Ethan stepped forward slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening, aware that he was a large stranger in the middle of the night asking a child to trust him. He crouched down to Emma's eye level. "Hi, Emma. Your mom's right. I'm Ethan. And yeah, this is all really weird and happening really fast. But here's what I want you to know. My job is to make sure you and your mom have a safe place to live. That's it. I'm not trying to be your dad or replace anybody. I'm just trying to help. Think you can give me a chance to do that? Emma studied him with eyes too old for 7, eyes that had already seen adults break promises and walk away. Do you have a dog? The question caught him off guard. No, no dog. Lucy wants one, Emma said. Does Lucy know about me? Not yet. She's asleep at home, but she's going to be really excited to meet you. She likes making new friends. What if we don't want to be friends? Ethan smiled despite everything. Then you figure out how to be not friends in the same house. Either way, you're safe. That's what matters. Emma considered this, then looked at her mother. Do we have to go right now? Yes, baby. We need to go to Ethan's house, and then in the morning we go see the judge and show her we have a good home. Then all of this, all the scary stuff with court and lawyers, it gets better, I promise. Promises were dangerous things to make to children, but Rachel made it anyway because sometimes you had to give them hope to hold on to. Emma slipped off the couch, still clutching her rabbit. Okay, but I need Mr. Floppy and my backpack with my books. Mrs. Patterson had already gathered Emma's things, an overnight bag that spoke of too many nights spent away from home. She hugged Rachel hard, whispered something Ethan couldn't hear, then looked at him one more time. You better be the good man you seem like, she said, for all their sakes. Yes, ma'am. The drive back to Maple Street was quiet. Emma sat in the back seat, staring out the window at the darkness, her rabbit pressed against her chest. Rachel kept turning around to check on her, maternal instinct overriding everything else. You okay, baby? Yeah. Emma's voice was small. Mama? Is our stuff still at the old apartment? Yes, we'll go back and get it later. Right now we just need… I know, we need to win. Emma said it matter-of-factly, like winning was something she'd been preparing for. That's what you told me. We have to win so I don't have to live with Daddy. The adult cynicism in a child's voice made Ethan's hands tighten on the steering wheel. 7 years old and already calculating outcomes, already understanding that her life was a contest she hadn't asked to enter. They pulled into the driveway as the first hint of dawn began to gray the eastern sky. 4 a.m. 4 hours until the courthouse opened. 8 hours until the custody hearing. Time was a countdown now, relentless and unforgiving. Inside the house, Ethan led them upstairs, Emma's hand tucked into her mother's, both of them moving like refugees entering sanctuary. He opened the door to Lucy's room carefully, trying not to wake her, but Lucy had always slept light, a legacy of nights when Sarah had been too sick to be quiet. Daddy? Lucy sat up, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? Hey, sweetheart. Sorry to wake you, but there's some people I want you to meet. Ethan gestured for Rachel and Emma to come closer. This is Rachel and her daughter Emma. Remember the nice waitress from the diner? Lucy nodded, still fuzzy with sleep, but curious. Well, Rachel and I got married tonight, which means Emma is your new sister, and they're going to be living here with us for a while. The information was too big, too strange for a 5-year-old to process at 4 in the morning. Lucy looked at Emma, who looked back with equal uncertainty. Hi, Lucy said finally. Hi, Emma whispered. Do you like French fries? Yeah. Okay, Lucy yawned. You can share my room if you want, but Mr. Bear sleeps on this side of the bed. Just like that, with the brutal simplicity of children, an agreement was reached. Emma looked at her mother, who nodded permission, and climbed into bed next to Lucy. The two girls regarded each other with the cautious interest of potential allies or enemies, the verdict still pending. Ethan backed out of the room, Rachel following. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, her whole body shaking. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered. I can't believe any of this is real. It's real. Ethan checked his watch. And in 4 hours, we need to be at the courthouse to make it legal. You should try to sleep. I can't sleep. I can't. Rachel pressed her hands to her face. What if this doesn't work? What if the judge sees through it? What if… Then we deal with it. Ethan kept his voice calm, steady, the same tone he'd used in the army when everything was going to hell and panic was the enemy. But right now, we focus on what we can control. You need rest. Guest room's made up. I'll wake you at 7. Rachel nodded, but didn't move. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. I know I keep saying it, but thank you. I don't understand why you're doing this, but thank you. Get some sleep, Rachel. She went to the guest room, closed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to his house full of people for the first time in 3 years. 2 little girls whispering in Lucy's room, Rachel moving around in the guest room. The ordinary sounds of a family, even if this family was built on legal fiction and desperate necessity. He went downstairs, made coffee he wouldn't drink, and waited for dawn. At 7 a.m., he woke Rachel. She emerged from the guest room looking like she hadn't slept at all, her eyes red, her clothes wrinkled. But there was steel in her spine, determination in the set of her jaw. I called my lawyer, she said, told her to meet us at the courthouse. She thinks we're insane. Probably. She also thinks it might work. They got the girls up, fed them breakfast that no one ate, and dressed them in the nicest clothes available. Lucy in a blue dress she hated but tolerated. Emma in something Rachel pulled from the overnight bag. Then they all climbed into Ethan's truck and drove to the courthouse. The building was already busy when they arrived, people streaming in and out with the resigned expressions of those forced to engage with bureaucracy. Ethan held Lucy's hand. Rachel held Emma's. They walked inside like a family, because for the next few hours, that's exactly what they had to be. The clerk's office opened at 8 sharp. Ethan and Rachel presented their application, answered questions, signed forms. The clerk, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient hands, processed their paperwork with practiced speed. Marriage ceremony can be performed immediately if you have a witness, she said. Or you can schedule something later. Immediately, Rachel said. Please. The clerk nodded, gestured to another employee who agreed to witness. They were led to a small room with fluorescent lighting and a state seal on the wall. A judge appeared, looking slightly bored, holding the standard civil ceremony script. Ethan James Cole and Rachel Ann Moore, you're here to be joined in marriage? Yes, they said together. The ceremony took 3 minutes. Repeat after me. I do, by the power vested in me. The judge signed the certificate, the witness signed, Ethan and Rachel signed. Just like that, they were married. Congratulations, the judge said without enthusiasm, already moving toward his next appointment. Certificate will be ready in 20 minutes. They waited in the hallway, the girls sitting on a bench between them, swinging their legs and sharing a bag of goldfish crackers Ethan had grabbed from the truck. Rachel stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I'm married, she said quietly. I'm actually married again. Yeah. To a man I met 12 hours ago. Yeah. This is insane. We've established that. Ethan watched the girls, saw Emma teaching Lucy some hand-clapping game. But look at them, already acting like sisters. Rachel followed his gaze and something in her expression softened. Kids are resilient. Yeah, they are. The clerk called them back, handed over the marriage certificate. Official, legal, real. Rachel tucked it into her purse like it was evidence of a crime. Now what? She asked. Ethan checked his watch. Now we go to family court. We show the judge you have exactly what she required, and we fight for your daughter. They drove across town to the family court building, arriving 30 minutes before the hearing. Rachel's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, was waiting outside. She took one look at the marriage certificate, at Ethan, at the 2 girls, and shook her head. This is the wildest thing I've seen in 20 years of family law, she said, but it just might work. It has to work, Rachel said. Then let's make it work. Patricia gathered them together, gave them final instructions. You're a family. You've been dating for months. The marriage was quick but genuine. Ethan, if anyone asks, you love Rachel and you're committed to helping raise Emma. Rachel, you're grateful for the stability and excited about the future. Girls, if anyone asks, you say you're happy. Got it? They all nodded, even Emma, who looked terrified but determined. At noon exactly, they entered the courtroom. Marcus was already there with his lawyers, expensive suits, and smug expressions. When he saw Rachel walk in with Ethan, with Emma holding both their hands, his face went dark with rage. What the hell is this? He demanded. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and no tolerance for nonsense, banged her gavel. Mr. Hale, sit down. Mrs. Moore, or should I say Mrs. Cole now. Please approach. Rachel walked forward, Ethan beside her, their marriage certificate held like a shield. And as the hearing began, as Patricia presented their case and Marcus's lawyers tried to tear it apart, Ethan realized something. This wasn't a lie anymore. Somewhere between the diner and the courthouse, between midnight and noon, they'd become what they were pretending to be, a family fighting to stay together. And he'd be damned if he let them lose. The judge's nameplate read, Honorable Margaret Winters, and her expression suggested she'd seen every variation of family drama that human beings could devise. She examined the marriage certificate with the careful attention of someone trained to spot forgeries, her reading glasses perched on her nose, her mouth set in a line that gave away nothing. This was issued this morning, Judge Winters said, her voice carrying across the courtroom with the weight of authority. At 8:07 a.m., to be precise. Your hearing was scheduled for noon. That's quite a tight timeline, Mrs. Cole. Rachel stood straighter, her hand finding Ethan's instinctively. Yes, Your Honor, we wanted to be married before the hearing. Marcus shot to his feet, his lawyer grabbing his arm to pull him back down, but the damage was done. This is a fraud. She found some random guy to marry her just to win custody. You can't seriously... Mr. Haley, I will hold you in contempt if you interrupt these proceedings again. Judge Winters didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The threat was clear. Sit down. Marcus sat, but his face was red with fury. His hands clenched into fists on the table. His lead attorney, a man named Kenneth Bradshaw, who looked like he charged by the syllable, stood smoothly. Your Honor, if I may, my client's concerns, while perhaps expressed with too much emotion, are valid. Mrs. Moore, excuse me, Mrs. Cole, has presented a marriage certificate dated mere hours before this hearing. The timing is suspicious at best, fraudulent at worst. We request that the court investigate the legitimacy of this marriage before considering it as evidence of stability. Patricia Chen stood, her movements equally smooth, equally practiced. Your Honor, my client has provided a valid marriage certificate issued by the state of Virginia. The timing, while perhaps unusual, is not illegal. People get married quickly for many reasons. Love doesn't operate on a court-mandated schedule. Judge Winters looked at Rachel, then at Ethan, her gaze penetrating. Mr. Cole, is it? Yes, Your Honor. Ethan's voice was steady, the same calm he'd cultivated during depositions for his own custody case. How long have you known Mrs. Cole? I've known her casually for about 6 months, Your Honor. She worked at a diner my daughter and I frequent. We started dating about 3 months ago. The lie came out clean, practiced from their early morning rehearsal. Ethan could feel Marcus's stare burning into the side of his head, could sense the man's lawyers already planning their attack. And you decided to marry her, why? Because I love her, Your Honor, and because I love her daughter. When Rachel told me about the custody situation, about the requirements the court had set for her to maintain custody, I realized we didn't need to wait. We were already committed to each other. Making it legal just formalized what we already knew. Judge Winters' expression didn't change. That's very convenient timing, Mr. Cole. It's honest timing, Your Honor. Ethan met her eyes directly. I'm not going to stand here and pretend this is some fairy tale romance. The truth is, Rachel was drowning trying to meet impossible standards while working 2 jobs to afford a lawyer to fight for her daughter. I have a house, stable income, and I understand what it's like to have someone question whether you're fit to raise your own child. So yeah, we got married fast, but that doesn't make it fake. Bradshaw pounced. Your Honor, Mr. Cole just admitted this marriage is a response to the custody case, not a genuine romantic relationship. This is exactly the kind of fraud. Counsel, I'm perfectly capable of understanding testimony without your interpretation. Judge Winters turned back to Ethan. Mr. Cole, have you been married before? Yes, Your Honor. My wife Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry for your loss, and you have a daughter? Lucy, she's 5. How does Lucy feel about suddenly acquiring a stepmother and a stepsister? Ethan glanced back at where the girls sat in the front row, Lucy's hand wrapped around Emma's, both of them watching the proceedings with wide, serious eyes. She's adjusting, Your Honor, but kids are resilient. They're already becoming friends. Judge Winters followed his gaze, studied the girls for a long moment. Then she turned to Rachel. Mrs. Cole, tell me about your living situation prior to this marriage. Rachel's voice trembled slightly, but she kept her composure. I was renting a studio apartment in the Oak Ridge complex, Your Honor. It was all I could afford working at the diner and picking up housekeeping jobs on the side. It was clean and safe, but small. Emma slept on a pull-out couch in the living area. And now? Now we live with Ethan at his house on Maple Street. Emma has her own bedroom. There's a yard. It's stable. Convenient that this stability appeared exactly when the court required it. Rachel flinched, but didn't back down. Your Honor, I've been trying to provide stability for Emma her entire life. I left my marriage because Marcus was emotionally abusive. I took a studio apartment because it was what I could afford while paying for childcare and lawyers. I worked every shift I could get because I refused to give up. The fact that Ethan came into our lives when he did, maybe that's timing, maybe that's luck, maybe it's something else. But it's real. The marriage is real. Our commitment to raising these girls together is real. Marcus couldn't stay quiet. She's lying. She barely knows this guy. This is all a setup to manipulate the court. Mr. Hale, Judge Winter's patience was clearly wearing thin. One more outburst and you'll be removed from this courtroom. Do I make myself clear? Marcus's lawyer whispered urgently to him, and he subsided, but the rage radiating from him was almost physical. Bradshaw stood again, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, we'd like to request a continuance. Given the highly unusual circumstances of this sudden marriage, we believe the court needs time to properly investigate whether this is a genuine relationship or a calculated attempt to circumvent the court's previous ruling regarding Mrs. Moore's housing situation. She's Mrs. Cole now, Patricia interjected sharply. Legally married, and my client has met every requirement the court set forth. Stable housing, stable relationship, proof of commitment. Requesting a continuance at this point is simply Mr. Hale's attempt to delay because he knows his case has weakened. Judge Winters leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. The courtroom held its collective breath. Outside, somewhere far away, traffic hummed and life continued for people who weren't waiting to hear if a family would be torn apart. Here's what I'm going to do, Judge Winters said finally. I'm not granting a continuance. However, I am ordering a home study. A social worker will visit the Cole residence within the next 30 days and assess the living situation. They'll interview the family, observe the home environment, and report back to this court. Rachel's hand tightened on Ethan's. 30 days. They had to maintain this fiction for 30 days. In the interim, the judge continued, custody will remain split as currently ordered. Emma will spend weekdays with Mrs. Cole and weekends with Mr. Hale until the home study is complete and I can make a final determination. Your Honor, that's not... Patricia began, but Judge Winters held up a hand. That's my ruling, counsel. Mrs. Cole has improved her circumstances significantly, but given the timing and the questions raised, I need independent verification before I modify custody arrangements. 30 days? Then we reconvene. She banged her gavel. Next case. Just like that, it was over. Not a victory, not a defeat. A stay of execution. They filed out of the courtroom, Ethan's hand on Rachel's back, both girls between them. Marcus caught up to them in the hallway, his lawyers trying to hold him back. You think you're clever? He snarled at Rachel. You think I don't see what this is? You're going to screw this up, Rachel. You always do. And when you do, when this fake marriage falls apart, Emma's coming home with me where she belongs. Back off, Ethan said quietly, stepping between Marcus and Rachel. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats. He just stood there, solid and immovable, and something in his eyes made Marcus take a step back. Who the hell are you supposed to be, her knight in shining armor? Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, buddy. Rachel's a disaster. She'll drag you down with her. We're done here. Ethan turned, gathered Rachel and the girls, and walked away. Behind them, Marcus was still talking, still trying to land blows with words, but his voice faded as they pushed through the courthouse doors into the bright afternoon sun. In the parking lot, Rachel finally broke. She leaned against Ethan's truck, her whole body shaking, tears streaming down her face. Emma wrapped her arms around her mother's waist, her own eyes wet. It's okay, Mama. It's okay. I still have to give you to him on weekends, Rachel choked out. I thought if we did this, If we got married, the judge would see. She saw, Patricia said, joining them. She saw everything, but Winters is careful. She's not going to rule based on a marriage certificate issued hours before the hearing without verification. The home study is actually good news. How is that good news? Rachel demanded. Because it means she's taking your situation seriously. She's not dismissing your marriage as fraud outright. She wants proof, and we can give her that proof. You just have to make it through 30 days. Rachel looked at Ethan, panic in her eyes. 30 days? We have to convince a social worker that we're a real family for 30 days. Then that's what we do. Ethan kept his voice calm, even though his own mind was racing. 30 days of maintaining this fiction. 30 days of pretending to be married to a woman he barely knew. 30 days of hoping the girls didn't inadvertently reveal the truth. It should have felt impossible. Instead, it just felt like the next mission. They drove home in silence, the girls dozing in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the last 12 hours. When they pulled into the driveway on Maple Street, the house looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but everything had changed. Inside, Rachel stood in the living room like she didn't know where to go, what to do now that the immediate crisis had passed. Emma clung to her hand, and Lucy hovered nearby, sensing the tension but not understanding it. You should rest, Ethan said. Both of you. It's been a long day. It's 2 in the afternoon. Doesn't matter. You barely slept. Emma barely slept. Take a nap. I'll make dinner later. Rachel nodded numbly. Let him guide her and Emma upstairs to the guest room. He left them there, door closed, and came back down to find Lucy waiting for him with questions in her eyes. Daddy, is Emma going to live here now? Yes, sweetheart. Her and her mom, they're part of our family now. Forever? Ethan crouched down to her level. I don't know about forever, Lou, but for a while. Maybe a long while. Is that okay with you? Lucy considered this seriously. Emma's nice, she shared her crackers, but she's sad. She is sad. Her daddy's not very nice to her mama, and that makes Emma worried. Like how Grandma and Grandpa tried to take me away from you? Ethan's chest tightened. He'd hoped Lucy didn't remember much of that time, but kids remembered more than adults gave them credit for. Yeah, kind of like that. But you didn't let them. No, I didn't. So you won't let Emma's daddy take her away either? I'm going to try my very best not to. Lucy nodded, accepting this. Then she surprised him by wrapping her arms around his neck. I'm glad they're here, Daddy. The house is less quiet. She was right. The house was less quiet. It was fuller, messier, more complicated. But maybe quiet had been the problem all along. Maybe they'd both been rattling around in too much silence, pretending that was the same as peace. That evening, Ethan made spaghetti because it was simple, and kids universally accepted it. Rachel emerged from the guest room looking slightly less shell-shocked, Emma trailing behind her. They ate together at the kitchen table, the girls talking about nothing and everything the way children do, while the adults picked at their food and avoided discussing the elephant in the room. After dinner, after the dishes were done and the girls were watching a movie in the living room, Rachel found Ethan on the back porch. He was staring at the overgrown yard, a beer he wasn't drinking in his hand. Thank you, Rachel said quietly, sitting in the chair next to him. For today. For all of this. I know I keep saying it. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. Because what you did today, standing up there, telling the judge you loved me, committing to 30 days of this charade, you didn't have to do any of it. Ethan took a sip of beer. Charade makes it sound fake. Isn't it? He turned to look at her, really look at her. Rachel Moore, now Rachel Cole, who'd been a stranger 24 hours ago and was now his wife. She looked exhausted, scared, but also stronger than she probably realized. The kind of strength that came from surviving things that should have broken you. I don't know, he admitted. Yesterday, yeah, it was completely fake. But today, standing in that courtroom, watching your ex try to tear you down, seeing Emma hold Lucy's hand like they've been sisters forever, it didn't feel fake. It felt like protecting my family, and I know that's crazy because we're not really family, but it felt real anyway, Rachel finished. Yeah. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the girls laughing inside, to the evening settling around them. Finally, Rachel spoke again. What happens when the social worker comes? They're going to ask questions. They're going to look for signs we're lying. Then we don't give them any. Ethan set down his beer. We need a story, a real one, detailed enough to be believable. We need to know things about each other that married couples know. Like what? Like how we take our coffee, what side of the bed we sleep on, what we do on weekends, the little things that make a life together real. Rachel pulled her knees up to her chest. This is insane. We're going to study for being married like it's a test. Pretty much. And if we fail, we don't fail. Ethan's voice was firm. Failure means Emma goes to Marcus. That's not an option. Rachel was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Tell me about your wife, Sarah." The question caught him off guard. Why? Because the social worker is going to ask. Because I should know. Because you're doing all this for a stranger, and I want to understand why. Ethan looked out at the darkening yard, gathering words for a story he usually kept locked away. Sarah was a teacher, elementary school. She loved kids, loved her job, loved life in this completely fearless way that used to terrify me. When we found out about the cancer, she made me promise not to fall apart after she was gone. Made me promise to keep living, keep raising Lucy, keep finding reasons to smile. Did you? Kept living, kept raising Lucy. The smiling part's been harder. He turned to Rachel. But she was right about one thing. Life doesn't stop just because you're grieving. You have to keep moving forward, even when forward feels impossible. So that's what I did. And when I saw you at that diner falling apart because you were about to lose your daughter, I couldn't walk away. Sarah wouldn't have walked away. She would have helped. So you're helping for her? No, I'm helping for Emma, for you, for Lucy, who deserves to see her dad do the right thing even when it's hard. I'm helping because it's what you do when you can. Ethan met Rachel's eyes. But yeah, maybe Sarah's in there somewhere too. Maybe I'm finally keeping that promise about not falling apart. Rachel wiped at her eyes. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. Ethan smiled, a real one this time. You would have liked her. She had this way of making everyone feel like they mattered, like they were seen. She would have been all over this plan, organizing everything, making spreadsheets about how to convince the social worker. I wish I could have met her. Me too. Inside, the movie ended, and Lucy called for her dad. Ethan stood, offered Rachel a hand up. Come on, we've got bedtime routines to figure out. The next weeks developed their own rhythm, strange and improvised but increasingly natural. Mornings meant breakfast chaos, two girls fighting for the bathroom, backpacks and lunchboxes, and the eternal search for matching socks. Ethan drove Lucy to kindergarten while Rachel took Emma to second grade, both of them navigating carpool lines and teacher conferences like they'd been doing it together for years instead of days. Weekends were the hardest. Friday evenings when Rachel had to hand Emma over to Marcus, watching her daughter climb into his expensive car, seeing the smug satisfaction on his face. Rachel would come back inside shaking with rage and grief, and Ethan learned to give her space while also making sure she wasn't alone. Sometimes Lucy would crawl into Rachel's lap without being asked, offering the kind of comfort only children could give. Sunday nights when Emma came back, she'd be withdrawn, quiet in a way that worried Rachel. It took hours for her to readjust, to remember this house was home, this family was hers. Lucy helped with that too, pulling Emma into games and make-believe, creating a world where 7-year-olds could forget about custody battles and just be kids. Through it all, Ethan and Rachel learned each other. Coffee black for him, cream and sugar for her. She was a morning person who got up before dawn. He was a night owl who did his best thinking after midnight. She sang while she cooked, off-key but enthusiastic. He fixed things compulsively, always finding broken drawer handles and leaky faucets to occupy his hands. She organized everything. He lived in comfortable chaos. They were opposites in most ways, but opposites could work together if they tried. The house changed too. Rachel's plants appeared on windowsills. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. The guest room stopped being a guest room and became Rachel and Emma's space, with curtains Rachel bought at Target and a rug Emma picked out. The bathroom accumulated more products, more towels, more evidence of female occupation. The kitchen smelled like Rachel's cooking experiments, ambitious attempts that sometimes succeeded and sometimes resulted in pizza delivery. They looked like a family. From the outside, they were a family. But inside, in the quiet moments when the girls were asleep and Ethan and Rachel sat in the living room pretending to watch television, they both knew the truth. This was temporary. This was performance. This was a means to an end. Except it was starting to feel less temporary with each passing day. 3 weeks in, Rachel came home from work to find Ethan in the garage covered in grease working on her car. She'd mentioned the check engine light that morning, mentioned she couldn't afford to get it looked at right now. "What are you doing?" she asked. Ethan didn't look up from the engine. "Your oxygen sensors shot. Replaced it. Also did your oil change while I was at it. You were about 2,000 miles overdue." "Ethan, you didn't have to." "Yeah, I did. Can't have you breaking down on the way to work." He wiped his hands on a rag, finally met her eyes. "It's what family does." Family. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them wanted to examine too closely. "How much do I owe you?" Rachel asked. "Nothing. Part cost me $40. Labor's free." "I can't just—" "Rachel." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "Let me do this. Please." She nodded, blinking back tears that seemed to come easier these days. "Okay. Thank you." That night she made his favorite meal. He'd mentioned once that he missed pot roast like his mother used to make, and they ate together while the girls did homework at the table. Domesticity wrapped around them like a blanket, comfortable and warm and terrifying in its ease. 4 weeks in, the social worker called. Her name was Jennifer Hayes, and she'd be conducting the home study the following Tuesday. Ethan and Rachel spent the weekend preparing, cleaning the house top to bottom, rehearsing their story, coaching the girls on what to say. "Just be honest," Ethan told them. "Tell her you're happy here. Tell her you like being sisters. That's all the truth." "But it's not all true," Emma said, her voice small. "You and Mama aren't really married like married. You don't even sleep in the same room." Rachel and Ethan exchanged glances. They'd known this moment would come, the moment when the smart, observant children would start asking questions they couldn't easily answer. "We're married on paper," Rachel said carefully, "and we care about each other. Sometimes adults do things in different ways than you might expect. But the important thing is, we're a family, and we're safe, and we're together." "And we're going to stay together?" Lucy asked. "That's the plan, sweetheart," Ethan said, hoping it wasn't a lie. Tuesday arrived with clear skies and crushing pressure. Jennifer Hayes showed up at precisely 10 a.m., a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a clipboard that probably held their fate. She spent an hour walking through the house, asking questions, taking notes. She interviewed Ethan alone, then Rachel alone, then the girls together. When she finished, she sat at their kitchen table and smiled. "You have a lovely home," she said. "The girls seem genuinely happy. You've clearly made efforts to create a stable, nurturing environment." "Thank you," Rachel said, her hands clenched together under the table where Jennifer couldn't see them, shaking. "I do have some concerns," Jennifer consulted her notes. "The marriage is very recent. The girls still call each other by first names rather than sisters. There are separate bedrooms for the adults, which, while not unusual, does raise questions about the nature of the relationship." "We're taking things slow," Ethan said. "Rachel and Emma moved in quickly because of the custody situation, but we're trying to make sure everyone adjusts at their own pace. The separate bedrooms are temporary until Rachel's comfortable." It was a good answer, practiced but believable. Jennifer nodded, made more notes. "I'll need to do a follow-up visit in 2 weeks. Then I'll submit my report to Judge Winters." She stood, shook their hands. "I appreciate your cooperation. You should hear something within a month." After she left, Rachel collapsed onto the couch. "Did we pass?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but we did our best." Their best would have to be enough, because in 2 weeks Jennifer would be back, and in a month they'd be back in Judge Winters' courtroom, waiting to hear if their desperate gamble had paid off, waiting to hear if the family they'd built from lies and necessity could survive the truth. The 2 weeks between Jennifer Hayes' first and second visit moved with the strange elasticity of time under pressure, days that felt simultaneously endless and far too short. Ethan found himself hyper-aware of every detail, every interaction, cataloging moments that might be examined later for authenticity. Rachel moved through the house like someone waiting for a trap to spring, her shoulders tight with tension that never quite released. But the girls had no such concerns. Emma and Lucy had progressed past cautious friendship into something that looked startlingly like actual sisterhood, complete with territorial disputes over bathroom time and elaborate schemes to stay up past bedtime. Thursday afternoon, Ethan came home from the construction site to find them in the backyard, covered in mud, constructing what they insisted was a fairy village, but looked more like a series of holes and piles. "We need more sticks," Lucy announced, holding up something that might have once been part of the fence. "And glitter. Fairies like glitter." "Fairies also probably like when you don't destroy the yard," Ethan said, but he was smiling. Rachel appeared at the back door, took one look at the mud-covered children, and laughed for the first time in days. "Bath time is going to be an adventure," she said. "I'll get the hose," Ethan offered. "Absolutely not. It's 40 degrees out here." Rachel stepped into the yard, careful to avoid the worst of the mud. "Come on, girls, inside, shoes off at the door." The protests were loud but ineffective. 20 minutes later, both girls were in the bathtub, still arguing about fairy architecture while Rachel supervised and Ethan started dinner. The domesticity of it struck him again, the way it kept striking him. This wasn't supposed to feel natural, but it did. Later, after the girls were in bed and the kitchen was clean, Rachel joined him on the back porch. It had become their unspoken routine, these evening conversations where they stopped performing and just existed for a while. "Marcus called today?" Rachel said without preamble. "He wants to change the custody schedule. Take Emma for an entire week over spring break." Ethan's hands tightened on his beer bottle. "What did you tell him?" "I told him we'd discuss it after the judge's ruling. He didn't like that." Rachel pulled her jacket tighter against the cold. "He said I was being difficult, that I was using Emma as a weapon. The irony would be funny if it didn't make me want to scream."
"He's testing you, seeing if you'll crack." "I know." Rachel's voice was tired. "And the worst part is Emma doesn't want to go. She told me yesterday that Daddy's house is too quiet, that his new girlfriend doesn't talk to her much, that she misses Lucy on the weekends. But I can't use that. Can't tell the court my daughter prefers us without sounding like I'm coaching her." "You're not coaching her. You're just being her mother." "Tell that to Marcus's lawyers." Ethan understood the frustration, the helplessness of fighting a system that required you to prove love through documentation and testimony. "When's the follow-up visit?" "Next Tuesday, same time." Rachel turned to look at him. "Ethan, what if Jennifer sees through us? What if she figures out this whole thing started as a charade?" "Then we tell her the truth." Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" "We tell her that, yeah, we got married quickly because of the custody case. But we also tell her that somewhere along the way, it stopped being just about the case. That we're building something real here, even if it didn't start that way." "Is that true?" Rachel asked quietly. "Are we building something real?" Ethan looked at her, at this woman who'd stumbled into his life during a breakdown at a diner and somehow became essential. "I think so. I think maybe we have been for a while now." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy with implications neither of them was quite ready to examine. Finally, Rachel stood. "I should get some sleep, early shift tomorrow." "Rachel, wait." Ethan stood too. "If this goes south, if the judge doesn't buy it and Marcus gets custody, you know that's not on you, right? You did everything you could. You fought harder than anyone should have to fight. But it might not be enough." "Then we fight harder." Ethan's voice was firm. "We don't give up until there's nothing left to try." Rachel nodded, wiped at her eyes, and went inside. Ethan stayed on the porch longer, staring at the dark yard, at the remains of the fairy village the girls had built. Childhood was supposed to be about fairy villages and mud, not custody battles and social worker evaluations. But life didn't care what things were supposed to be. The weekend brought Marcus again, showing up Friday evening with his usual smug expression and his new girlfriend clinging to his arm like an accessory. Ethan watched from the living room window as Rachel walked Emma out to the car, watched the way Marcus's girlfriend barely acknowledged the child, watched Emma's shoulders slump as she climbed into the back seat. "I hate him," Lucy said from beside Ethan, her small face pressed against the window. "He makes Emma sad." "Yeah, he does." "Can't you make him stop?" "I'm trying, sweetheart.
Rachel came back inside looking gutted, moved straight to the kitchen without speaking. Ethan found her there 10 minutes later, gripping the counter like it was the only thing holding her up. "She didn't want to go," Rachel whispered. "She begged me to let her stay home. But if I don't comply with the custody order, Marcus will use it against me. So I made her go. I made my daughter get into a car with a man who sees her as a trophy, not a person. You didn't make her. The court made her. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel like there's a difference." Rachel's voice broke. "I'm her mother. I'm supposed to protect her." "You are protecting her. That's what all of this is about." Rachel turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "What if it's not enough? What if we do everything right and the judge still gives him custody? What if I lose her anyway?" Ethan crossed the kitchen, pulled Rachel into his arms before he could think better of it. She stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against him, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding in for weeks. He held her, one hand in her hair, the other solid against her back, and let her break because sometimes breaking was necessary. "You're not going to lose her," he said into her hair. "I won't let that happen." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, while Lucy watched from the doorway with wide, knowing eyes. Later, Ethan would wonder if that was the moment everything changed, the moment when the performance became reality. But right then, he just held Rachel and meant every impossible promise he was making. Sunday night, Emma came back subdued and quiet. She went straight to her room, wouldn't talk about the weekend, barely touched her dinner. Rachel tried to draw her out, but Emma just shook her head and asked to be alone. After she went to bed, Rachel sat on the couch looking defeated. "She's pulling away on," Rachel said. "Every weekend with him, she comes back a little more closed off." "She's protecting herself," Ethan said. "It's what kids do when they're stuck between two worlds." "I hate that she has to protect herself. I hate that my 7-year-old has to develop coping mechanisms for her own father." Monday brought another complication. Ethan's foreman called him into the office, sat him down with an expression that meant trouble. "Cole, I need to talk to you about your hours." Ethan had been bracing for this. The last month he'd been leaving early for school pickups, taking time off for court dates, missing overtime to be home for dinner. Construction sites didn't run on family schedules. "I know I've been asking for a lot of flexibility lately," Ethan said. That's one way to put it. His foreman, a gruff man named Mike Rodriguez, who'd been in construction longer than Ethan had been alive, leaned back in his chair. "You've been my most reliable guy for 3 years. Now you're cutting out early, missing Saturdays, distracted on site. What's going on?" Ethan could have lied, could have given some vague excuse. Instead, he told the truth. About Rachel, about the custody case, about the marriage and the home study, and the constant pressure of trying to convince the world they were a real family. Mike listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Ethan finished, the older man was quiet for a long moment. "That's the craziest thing I've heard in 30 years, Mike said finally. "And I once had a guy tell me he couldn't come to work because he'd accidentally joined a circus. I know it sounds insane. It sounds like you're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons that somehow became the right reasons anyway." Mike shook his head. "Look, I can't keep giving you early dismissals without it affecting the crew. But what I can do is switch you to a project closer to home, one with more predictable hours. Pays the same, and you'll be able to make school pickup without leaving the site in the lurch." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. "Mike, don't thank me yet. New project's a renovation on that old elementary school on Birch Street. It's going to be tedious as hell, lots of detail work, probably takes 6 months. But the hours are 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, weekends off." "That's perfect." "Yeah, well, don't screw it up. And Cole?" Mike's expression softened slightly. "That kid's lucky to have you fighting for her. Both those kids are." Tuesday morning arrived too fast. Ethan took the day off, told Mike it was non-negotiable. Jennifer Hayes showed up at 10 a.m. exactly, her clipboard in hand, her expression professionally neutral. This time, she was more thorough. She checked the refrigerator, noted the mix of healthy food and kid-friendly snacks. She examined the bedrooms, saw Emma's drawings on the wall, Lucy's stuffed animals arranged carefully on both beds. She asked the girls about their daily routines, about chores and homework, and what they did for fun. "Do your parents ever fight?" Jennifer asked them. Lucy and Emma exchanged glances. Sometimes, Emma said carefully, about little stuff, like who forgot to take out the trash or if we can have dessert before dinner. But they don't yell, Lucy added. Daddy never yells. Mama neither. What about between themselves? Do Ethan and Rachel argue? Not really, Emma said. They talk a lot on the porch at night. Sometimes Mama looks sad and Daddy makes her laugh. Jennifer made notes. Then she interviewed Ethan and Rachel together, watching their body language, their interactions. Tell me about a typical evening in this household, she said. Rachel and Ethan took turns describing the organized chaos of dinner time, of homework battles and bath time negotiations, of bedtime stories, and the constant search for matching socks. As they talked, Ethan realized they weren't performing anymore. This was just their life now, the rhythm they developed without consciously planning it. And weekends when Emma is with her father? Jennifer asked. Quieter, Rachel admitted. Harder. I miss her. We all do. How does Lucy handle Emma being gone? She counts down until Sunday, Ethan said. Asks every hour when her sister's coming home. Jennifer's pen scratched across paper. Emma, Lucy, you call each other sisters? Emma's my sister, Lucy said firmly. We share a room sometimes. She helps me with hard words in my books. And you're happy living here, Emma? Emma nodded. It's better than the apartment. I have space for my stuff, and Lucy's fun, and Mama smiles more now. Does she? Yeah. Before, when it was just us, Mama was always worried about money and stuff. Now she still worries, but not as much. Ethan fixes things so they don't break as much. Jennifer turned to Ethan. You've taken on a lot of responsibility very quickly. A wife, a stepdaughter, financial obligations. That's a significant change from living alone with your daughter. Yes, it is, Ethan agreed. But it's a good change. This house needed life in it again. We needed life in it. Rachel and Emma gave us that. And you're committed to this arrangement long term? I'm committed to my family. Ethan reached over, took Rachel's hand. The gesture was automatic, natural. Whatever that looks like, however it develops, I'm in. Jennifer made more notes, asked more questions. She wanted to know about finances, about childcare arrangements, about plans for the future. She asked about Sarah, about how Lucy had handled her mother's death, about whether Ethan had considered how Rachel and Emma fit into that grief. Lucy still misses her mom, Ethan said. She always will. But having Rachel here, having Emma, it doesn't replace Sarah. Nothing could. But it helps. It shows Lucy that loss doesn't mean the end of family. It just means family can look different than you expected. Finally, after 2 hours, Jennifer closed her notebook. I think I have what I need. I'll compile my report and submit it to Judge Winters by the end of the week. You should expect a court date within 2 weeks for the final custody determination. What do you think? Rachel asked, unable to help herself. I know you can't tell us your recommendation, but I think you've created a stable home, Jennifer said carefully. I think the girls are thriving. Whether that's enough to convince Judge Winters, I can't say. But you should be proud of what you've built here, regardless of how it started. After she left, Rachel paced the living room while Ethan sat very still, processing. Whether that's enough, Rachel repeated. Regardless of how it started. She knows, Ethan. She knows this marriage was about the custody case. Maybe. But she also sees that it's become more than that. Has it? Rachel stopped pacing, faced him. Because I can't tell anymore. I don't know what's real and what's performance. I don't know if you're being nice because you're a good person or because the social worker might be watching. I don't know if this feeling in my chest when I look at you is gratitude or something else. I don't know anything anymore except that I'm terrified of losing Emma, and I'm equally terrified of what happens after the ruling, when we don't have to pretend anymore. Ethan stood, crossed to her. What if we're not pretending? We got married in a courthouse after knowing each other for 12 hours. That's not real, Ethan. That's desperation. It started as desperation, Ethan agreed. But desperation doesn't make dinner every night. Desperation doesn't help with homework and fix cars and hold you when you cry. Desperation doesn't feel like this. Like what? Like coming home actually means something again. Rachel stared at him, her eyes wide, her breath coming fast. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because what happens when the judge rules? If we win, if I get custody, we don't need this marriage anymore. We can get divorced, go back to our separate lives. If we lose, her voice broke. If we lose, I don't know what I'll do, but I can't drag you down with me. You're not dragging me anywhere. Ethan took her hands. Rachel, listen to me. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan to care about you, to look forward to your terrible singing in the morning, or the way you reorganize my kitchen cabinets when you're stressed. I didn't plan to love watching you be a mother, to respect the hell out of how hard you fight. But here we are. Here we are, Rachel echoed, tears streaming down her face. Married to a stranger who became something else entirely. Is that so terrible? Before Rachel could answer, Lucy appeared in the doorway. Daddy? Emma's crying in her room. She won't tell me why. The moment shattered. Rachel pulled away, wiped her eyes, headed for the stairs. Ethan followed, found Emma curled on her bed, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Baby, what's wrong? Rachel sat on the bed, pulled Emma into her lap. I don't want to go to Daddy's this weekend, Emma sobbed. I want to stay here. Why can't I just stay here? Rachel looked at Ethan over Emma's head, her expression breaking. This was the reality of their situation. A 7-year-old crying because the system forced her to split her life between two houses, two parents who couldn't be in the same room without lawyers present. Ethan sat on the other side of Emma, his large hand gentle on her small back. I know it's hard, Em. I know you wish things were different. Can't you tell the judge I want to stay here? Can't someone ask me? The judge knows, Rachel said, her voice thick with tears. But sometimes grown-ups have to follow rules even when the rules don't make sense. Just a little longer, baby. We're going to court soon and then we'll know for sure where you'll live. I want to live here. With you and Ethan and Lucy. This is my home. Lucy crawled onto the bed too, wrapped her arms around Emma. You're my sister. Sisters live together. The four of them sat there on Emma's bed, tangled together, and Ethan felt something solidify in his chest. This wasn't about legal strategy anymore. This wasn't about beating Marcus or impressing a judge. This was about the 3 females in his life who'd somehow become his entire world in the space of a month. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep, Ethan found Rachel in the kitchen making tea she wouldn't drink. I meant what I said earlier, he told her, about this being real. Rachel didn't turn around. I can't think about that right now. I can't think about us or what this is or what it might become. I can only think about Friday, about the court date, about whether I'm going to lose my daughter. You won't. You don't know that. Rachel spun to face him, her control finally cracking completely. You keep saying it like it's a promise you can keep, but you can't control this. Neither of us can. Marcus has money, connections, a stable relationship with a woman who isn't working 2 jobs. He has everything the system values. He doesn't have what matters. Love doesn't matter to family court, Ethan. Stability matters. Financial resources matter. The appearance of a normal family matters. And we're not normal. We're a construction worker and a waitress who got married in a courthouse to game the system. We're a family, Ethan said firmly. A real one. And I'm going to stand in front of Judge Winters and tell her exactly that. And if she doesn't believe you, then we appeal. We fight. We keep fighting until there's nothing left to try. Rachel slumped against the counter. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but you're not fighting alone anymore. Ethan moved closer. That's what you don't seem to understand. You've been carrying this by yourself for so long you forgot what it feels like to have backup. But you have it now. You have me. You have Lucy. You have a home that's not going anywhere regardless of what happens in court. You'd really do that? Keep us here even if we lose? Rachel, you're my wife. Emma's my stepdaughter, Lucy's sister. Those aren't temporary titles just because the circumstances that created them were unusual. This is real, whether you're ready to believe it or not. Rachel stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for deception or pity or obligation. Whatever she found there made her shoulders drop, made her cross the kitchen and collapse against his chest. Ethan wrapped his arms around her and held on. I'm scared, she whispered against his shirt. Me too. What if I'm a terrible mother for putting her through this? You're the best mother I've ever seen, and I was married to one of the best. Rachel pulled back enough to look at him. Sarah would have been appalled by this whole situation.
Sarah would have helped me move your stuff in and then made spreadsheets about how to convince the social worker. Ethan smiled. She believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. This would have been exactly her kind of chaos. I wish I could have known her. You would have been friends. She had a thing about injustice, couldn't stand watching people get pushed around by systems or bullies. She would have taken one look at Marcus and declared war. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, holding each other, and for the first time since this whole thing started, Ethan felt something like peace. Whatever happened on Friday, they'd face it together. That had to count for something. The next few days crawled by, each one heavier than the last.
Ethan went to work on the new project, grateful for the predictable hours, for the mindless physical labor that kept his hands busy and his mind from spiraling. Rachel picked up extra shifts at the diner, needing the distraction, needing to feel like she was contributing financially, even though Ethan had told her 100 times she didn't need to. Thursday night, the night before the court date, neither of them could sleep. They sat on the porch in the dark, neither speaking, just existing in the tension of waiting. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "If we win tomorrow," she said quietly, "if the judge gives me full custody or even just maintains the current schedule, what happens to us? What do you want to happen?" I asked first. Ethan considered his answer carefully. "I want you to stay, both of you. Not because of the custody case or because you need somewhere to live. I want you to stay because this is where you belong. Because somewhere in the last month you became part of the life I'm living instead of just people sharing my house. And if I'm not ready for that, then we take it slow. We figure it out as we go. But Rachel, we're already married. We're already raising kids together. We're already most of the way to real. We're just scared to admit it." Rachel laughed, soft and sad. "Scared doesn't begin to cover it." "I know. I was married before, Ethan. I know what it looks like when someone says they love you, but really they just want to control you. How do I know this is different?" "Because you can leave anytime you want, and I'll help you pack." Ethan turned to face her. "That's the difference. Marcus trapped you. I'm asking you to choose to stay. If you don't want to, if you need space or time or distance, I'll help you find an apartment. I'll babysit Emma. I'll be your friend instead of your husband. But you have to know that you have a choice. You've always had a choice." Tears slipped down Rachel's face in the darkness. "What if I choose wrong?" "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. We really are a family, aren't we?" "Yeah, we really are." Friday morning broke cold and gray, the sky threatening rain. They dressed carefully, Ethan in his only suit, Rachel in a dress she'd borrowed from a friend, both girls in their nicest outfits. In the truck on the way to the courthouse, nobody spoke. The weight of what was coming pressed down on all of them. Marcus was already there when they arrived, his lawyers arranged around him like armor. He saw them walk in and his expression darkened, his jaw clenching. Judge Winters took the bench at precisely 9 a.m. She looked at the assembled parties, at Jennifer Hayes sitting in the back with her report, at the two little girls sitting between their parents. "We're here for final custody determination in the matter of Moore versus Hale," she said. "I've reviewed the social worker's report. I've considered all arguments presented by both parties. This is never an easy decision, but it's one I take very seriously." The courtroom held its breath, and Ethan reached over, took Rachel's hand, and held on. Judge Winters adjusted her reading glasses, her expression giving nothing away as she opened the folder containing Jennifer Hayes' report. The silence in the courtroom was absolute, broken only by the soft sound of pages turning. Rachel's hand was ice cold in Ethan's grip, her breathing shallow and fast. Beside them, Lucy had wrapped her arms around Emma, both girls understanding that something momentous was about to happen, even if they couldn't fully grasp the mechanics. "I've spent considerable time reviewing the evidence presented in this case," Judge Winters began, her voice measured and formal. "This court's primary concern, as always, is the best interest of the child. Not the preferences of either parent, not financial considerations, not even the child's stated wishes, though those are taken into account. The question before me is simple. Where will Emma Moore thrive?" Marcus shifted forward in his seat, his lawyers flanking him like guards. One of them, Bradshaw, stood smoothly. Your Honor, if I may— You may not, Mr. Bradshaw. Sit down. I've heard your arguments extensively over the past 2 months. Right now, I'm going to tell you what I've decided, and you're going to listen. Bradshaw sat, though his expression suggested he wasn't accustomed to being silenced. Marcus's face had gone red, a vein pulsing in his temple. Judge Winters continued. Mr. Hale, you presented a compelling case on paper. Stable income, excellent housing, a seemingly committed relationship. Your attorneys painted a picture of chaos and instability in Mrs. Cole's life, of a mother too busy working to adequately care for her daughter, of living situations that changed on a whim. Rachel's hand trembled in Ethan's. He squeezed tighter, trying to transmit strength he wasn't sure he possessed. However, Judge Winters said, and the single word shifted the entire atmosphere of the room. What your attorneys failed to adequately address was why those circumstances existed. Mrs. Cole was working multiple jobs because you refused adequate child support. She was living in a studio apartment because you leveraged your connections to ensure she couldn't secure better housing at reasonable rates. The instability you cited was largely created by your own actions. Marcus started to stand. His lawyer pulled him back down forcefully. Furthermore, the judge continued, the social worker's report paints a very different picture than the one your legal team presented. Ms. Hayes conducted extensive interviews and 2 separate home visits. Her findings are quite illuminating. Judge Winters looked directly at Rachel and Ethan. Mrs. Cole, when you first appeared before this court with a marriage certificate dated the morning of your hearing, I was skeptical. The timing was suspicious, the circumstances unusual. I ordered the home study not to punish you, but to determine whether this marriage was a genuine attempt at building a stable family or simply a legal maneuver. Your Honor, Patricia Chen stood. My client has been forthcoming about— Ms. Chen, please sit. I'm not finished. Judge Winters waited until Patricia resumed her seat. What Mrs. Hayes discovered during her investigation was unexpected. She found a household that, despite its unconventional origin, functions remarkably well. 2 children who have bonded as siblings. A couple who, regardless of how their relationship began, have created a genuinely supportive partnership. Most importantly, she found a child who is thriving. Emma pressed closer to Lucy, her eyes wide. Rachel was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Ms. Hayes also noted some concerning findings from her interviews with Emma regarding her time at Mr. Hale's residence. Emma reported feeling ignored by Mr. Hale's girlfriend, isolated during visits, and uncertain about her place in that household. When asked where she felt most at home, Emma was unequivocal, with her mother. That's coaching, Marcus burst out, finally unable to contain himself. Rachel obviously told her what to say. Mr. Hale, I'm going to warn you one final time. Sit down and be quiet, or I will have you removed and make my ruling in your absence. Marcus sat, but fury radiated from him in waves. His girlfriend, sitting behind him, had gone pale. Judge Winters looked down at her notes. Ms. Hayes's report contains several direct quotes from her interviews. I'd like to read one in particular. This is Emma, age 7, when asked to describe her typical evening at the Cole residence. She said, and I quote, Ethan makes dinner while Mama helps us with homework. Then we all eat together and talk about our day. Lucy tells the funniest stories and Mama laughs real hard, not fake laughing like she used to do. After dinner, Ethan checks my math because he's really good at numbers, and Mama reads to us before bed. Sometimes they both tuck us in, and the house feels full instead of empty. I feel safe there. The courtroom was absolutely still. Ethan felt something break open in his chest, heard Rachel's soft sob beside him. A house that feels full instead of empty, Judge Winters repeated. A child who feels safe. That is the standard by which I must measure. Not income, not square footage, not even the conventional timeline of a relationship. The question is where Emma Moore feels safe, supported, and loved. She closed the folder, removed her glasses, and looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Hale, I have no doubt you love your daughter in your own way, but love is not enough if it comes with conditions. If it's wielded as a weapon against her mother, if the child herself expresses anxiety about time spent in your care. You can't seriously Marcus started. I am seriously, Mr. Hale, and if you interrupt me again, you will be held in contempt. Judge Winter's voice was steel. Based on the evidence presented, on the social worker's comprehensive report, and on Emma's own expressed preferences, I am awarding primary physical custody to Rachel Cole. Emma will reside with her mother and stepfather full-time. Rachel's sob was audible now, relief and disbelief warring in the sound. Ethan pulled her against him as she shook. Mr. Hale, you will have visitation rights. Every other weekend, alternating holidays, 2 weeks during summer break. However, these visits will be supervised for the first 6 months. Supervised? Marcus shot to his feet, ignoring his lawyer's attempts to restrain him. You're going to treat me like I'm some kind of danger to my own daughter? I'm going to ensure that Emma's time with you is focused on building a healthy father-daughter relationship rather than on undermining her mother or expressing your grievances about the divorce. The supervision is not punitive, Mr. Hale. It's protective. If you demonstrate that you can maintain appropriate boundaries and prioritize Emma's emotional well-being, the supervision requirement will be lifted. Bradshaw finally got Marcus to sit down, though the man looked like he wanted to flip the table. His face was purple with rage, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Judge Winters turned back to Rachel and Ethan. Mrs. Cole, Mr. Cole, I want to be very clear about something. This ruling is based on the stability you have demonstrated over the past 6 weeks. It's based on Emma's well-being and her expressed comfort in your home. However, this court will be monitoring the situation. If circumstances change significantly, if the marriage dissolves, if the home environment becomes unstable, custody arrangements can be revisited. We understand, Your Honor, Patricia said, standing. My clients are committed to maintaining the stable environment they've created. See that you do. Judge Winters banged her gavel. Custody is awarded to Rachel Cole. Visitation scheduled to be implemented immediately as outlined. This court is adjourned. The gavel's sound was still echoing when Rachel turned and buried her face in Ethan's chest, her whole body shaking with sobs. Lucy and Emma had jumped up, were hugging each other and crying, though Emma's tears were the relieved kind that came after holding your breath too long. Patricia was gathering papers, speaking quickly to Rachel. This is binding. Marcus can appeal, but given the circumstances and the judge's clear findings, an appeal is unlikely to succeed. Emma's yours, Rachel. You won. Marcus was on his feet, stalking toward them, his lawyers trying to intercept him. This isn't over, he snarled at Rachel. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll appeal. I'll fight this all the way to the state Supreme Court if I have to. Ethan stood, putting himself between Marcus and Rachel. You heard the judge. You've got visitation rights. Use them to build a relationship with your daughter instead of trying to destroy her mother. That's how you actually win. Don't you dare tell me how to parent my child. You're just some construction worker she manipulated into playing house. I'm her stepfather, Ethan said quietly, but there was iron in his voice. And I'm going to be there every day, making sure Emma knows she's loved and safe. You could do the same during your visits, or you can keep fighting and push her further away. Your choice. Marcus looked like he wanted to throw a punch. His lawyers finally got him turned around, headed toward the exit, his girlfriend trailing behind looking shell-shocked. At the door, Marcus turned back. She'll hate you eventually, Rachel, just like she'll hate you, Cole. Kids always see through lies. Then it's good we're not lying, Ethan said. This is our family, real as it gets. Marcus left, slamming the courtroom door behind him. The sound reverberated through the space, final and absolute. Rachel was still crying, but now she was laughing too, the kind of hysterical relief that came when unbearable pressure suddenly released. Emma and Lucy were dancing around them, holding hands, chanting something about being sisters forever. Patricia packed up her briefcase, shook Ethan's hand, then Rachel's. I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. A marriage that started as legal strategy and became the real thing just in time to convince a judge. You two are either the luckiest people I've ever met, or proof that sometimes desperate measures lead to genuine miracles. Maybe both, Ethan said. After Patricia left, after the courthouse had emptied and they were standing in the parking lot in the pale winter sunlight, Rachel finally spoke. We won. I can't believe we actually won. You won, Ethan corrected. You fought for your daughter, and you won. We won.
Rachel looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen, but clearer than he'd seen them in weeks. I couldn't have done this without you. Without this, she gestured between them at the girls playing nearby, at the impossible family they'd built. I would have lost her, Ethan. If you hadn't walked up to me in that diner, if you hadn't offered something so crazy it just might work, Marcus would have won. But he didn't. No, he didn't. Rachel took a shaky breath. The judge said if circumstances change, if the marriage dissolves, custody could be revisited. Yeah, she did. So we have to stay married, at least for a while, long enough to prove it's real, that it's stable. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. They were standing in a courthouse parking lot, two people who'd been strangers 6 weeks ago, married because of a custody battle and staying married because of a judge's warning. It should have felt like a prison sentence. It didn't. What if we don't think of it as having to stay married, Ethan said. What if we think of it as choosing to stay married? Is there a difference? Yeah, there's a difference. Having to makes it an obligation. Choosing makes it a decision we make every day. Rachel studied his face. You'd really choose this? Choose me and Emma and all the complications that come with us? I already did. That first night in the diner, every day since then has just been me recommitting to that choice. Even though it's messy and complicated and we got married for all the wrong reasons? We got married for exactly the right reason, to protect a kid who needed protecting. Everything else we figured out along the way. Ethan reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Rachel, I know this started as pretend, but somewhere between the courthouse wedding and now it stopped being pretend for me. I don't know exactly when it happened, but I know what I feel is real. What do you feel? Ethan took a breath, committed to the truth. I feel like I want you to stay, not because a judge said you should, but because coming home to you and the girls is the best part of my day. I feel like watching you be a mother makes me want to be a better father. I feel like we've built something worth keeping, worth fighting for, worth choosing every single day, even when it's hard. Rachel was crying again, but these tears were different. I'm scared. I'm scared because I already lost one marriage and I can't go through that again. I'm scared because I don't know how to trust this, trust you, trust that this isn't just going to fall apart when the emergency is over. Then we take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations beyond what we've already been doing. We live together, raise the girls together, and see what develops. If it stays platonic roommates raising kids, fine. If it becomes something more, also fine. But Rachel, you don't owe me anything beyond what you're comfortable giving. What if what I'm comfortable giving changes? Then we adapt. That's what we've been doing all along. Rachel reached up, touched his face with fingers that still trembled slightly. You're a good man, Ethan Cole. Better than I deserve. You deserve everything, Ethan said firmly. You deserve peace and stability and someone who sees how hard you fight for your daughter. You deserve a partner, not a controller. You deserve to build a life that makes you happy. I think I'm building that life right now. With you. They stood there in the parking lot, the cold wind whipping around them, while their daughters played tag between the cars, shrieking with laughter. This was their family, built from desperation and necessity, and something that looked a lot like fate. The drive home was celebratory, the girls singing in the back seat, Rachel making calls to tell friends the good news, Ethan navigating familiar streets that led to a house that had stopped being just his and started being theirs. When they pulled into the driveway, Emma and Lucy tumbled out of the truck, racing to the door. Can we have ice cream to celebrate? Lucy called back. It's 10:30 in the morning, Rachel said. Exactly. Ice cream for breakfast because we're celebrating. Rachel looked at Ethan, who shrugged. They've got a point. This is a special occasion. You're terrible at discipline. Yeah, but I make good ice cream sundaes. They ended up in the kitchen, making elaborate sundaes with every topping they could find, making a mess that would take an hour to clean up, not caring because this moment was worth capturing and holding on to. Emma ate her ice cream with a smile that looked like she'd been holding it prisoner for months, finally released. Lucy was already planning how they'd rearrange Emma's room now that she was staying permanently. After the sugar high faded and the girls went upstairs to play, Rachel started cleaning the kitchen. Ethan joined her, working in the comfortable silence they'd developed over weeks of shared domesticity. When the dishes were done and the counters wiped down, Rachel leaned against the sink and looked at him.
What happens now? She asked. We've won the custody case. Emma's safe. We don't have to pretend anymore. Is that what we've been doing? Pretending? I don't know what we've been doing. Ethan dried his hands on a towel, turned to face her fully. I think we've been building a life. I think we've been figuring out how to be a family. And I think maybe we're both scared to call it what it is because that makes it real, and real things can hurt you. Real things can definitely hurt you, Rachel agreed. I have the scars to prove it. So do I. But real things can also save you. They can give you a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to try, a reason to believe that good things can happen even after everything's fallen apart. Is that what this is? A good thing? I think it might be the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah died. I think you and Emma walked into my life when I'd forgotten how to live instead of just survive. I think Lucy needed you as much as Emma needed us, and I think maybe we're all better together than we were apart. Rachel crossed to him, stood close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, could count the freckles across her nose. I need to tell you something. Okay. I've been falling in love with you, Ethan, slowly, without meaning to, without planning it. Somewhere between you fixing my car and holding me when I cried and being the father Emma never had, I started falling. And it terrifies me because I swore I'd never let myself be vulnerable to a man again. But here I am, vulnerable and scared and falling anyway. Ethan's heart was hammering in his chest. Rachel, let me finish. I don't know if what I feel is real, or if it's gratitude, or if it's just relief that someone finally helped me carry the weight I've been holding alone. I don't know if I'm capable of being the kind of wife you deserve, or if I'm too damaged from Marcus to ever trust completely again. But I know I want to try. I know that waking up in this house, in this life we've built, feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years. You're not damaged, Ethan said fiercely. You're strong and brave, and you've survived things that would have broken other people. What Marcus did to you, the way he controlled and diminished you, that wasn't your fault, and it doesn't define you. Then what defines me? The fact that you got out. The fact that you fought for your daughter against impossible odds. The fact that you're standing here right now, willing to be vulnerable, even though it scares you. That defines you. Rachel's eyes were wet again. How do you always know what to say? I don't. I just tell you the truth. She reached up, her hands framing his face. Can I kiss you? Is that okay? I know we're married, but we've never actually kissed, and I don't want to assume. Ethan kissed her, cutting off the anxious rambling, pouring everything he'd been feeling for weeks into the contact. Rachel made a small sound of surprise, then melted against him, her hand sliding into his hair. The kiss was tender and desperate, and full of promises neither of them had quite figured out how to voice yet. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rachel laughed shakily. Okay, that was... yeah. So we're really doing this? We're choosing this? If you want to. I want to, Rachel said. I'm scared and I don't have all the answers and I'll probably mess this up sometimes, but I want to try. That's all anyone can do. Try. And when we mess up, we talk about it and fix it and keep going. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, while upstairs the girls' laughter drifted down like music. This was their life now, messy and complicated and built on a foundation that started as lies but became truth through the simple act of showing up every day. That evening, they ordered pizza and had an impromptu celebration. Ethan invited Mrs. Chen from next door, who'd been watching the saga unfold with grandmotherly concern. Rachel called Mel from the diner, who showed up with a cake that said, "Congratulations," in shaky icing. They sat around the dining table, the one Ethan had eaten at alone for years, and it was full of noise and warmth and life. Mrs. Chen cornered Ethan while he was getting plates from the kitchen. "You did good, young man. That family needed you." "I needed them too," Ethan admitted. "I know. That house was too quiet after Sarah passed. It needed children's laughter again. It needed life. It has that now." "Yes, it does." Mrs. Chen patted his arm. "And you have a second chance at happiness. Don't waste it being afraid." Ethan thought about that later, after everyone had gone home and the girls were in bed, when he and Rachel found themselves on the back porch again in their customary chairs. Second chances were rare things, precious and fragile. You didn't waste them.
I was thinking, Rachel said into the quiet night, about what the judge said, about circumstances changing. Yeah?
We should probably make this real. The marriage, I mean, not just legally, but actually real.
Ethan turned to look at her.
What exactly are you proposing?
I'm proposing that we stop sleeping in separate rooms, that we stop acting like roommates who are putting on a show and start being actual partners. That we take this seriously because I think, she paused, gathering courage, I think we could be really good together if we let ourselves try. You want to move into my room? I want us to have a room, together. I want to wake up next to you and not pretend it's just for show. I want Emma and Lucy to see what a healthy relationship looks like. I want to give this a real shot. Ethan's heart was racing again, hope and fear tangled together. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Rachel reached across the space between their chairs, found his hand.
Unless you don't want that. Unless you're happy with how things are.
I'm not happy with how things are, Ethan said. I'm halfway in love with you and trying to respect boundaries that you might not even want anymore. I've been sleeping 20 feet away from you every night wanting to hold you, but not knowing if that would be crossing a line.
You're halfway in love with me? Maybe more than halfway. Rachel stood, pulled him to his feet. Then let's stop wasting time on fear. Let's choose this. Choose each other. Choose the life we've been building. They went inside together, hands linked, and Ethan showed Rachel where she could put her things in his closet, how the drawers in the dresser had been mostly empty for 3 years, waiting for someone to fill them. They moved her clothes from the guest room while the girls slept, transforming the space from temporary to permanent with each trip across the hallway. That night, Rachel slept in Ethan's arms for the first time, her head on his chest, his hand in her hair. It felt right in a way that made all the chaos and uncertainty worth it. This was what they'd been fighting for all along, not just Emma's custody, but the right to be a family, to build something real from the ashes of their separate losses. The next morning, Emma came looking for her mother and found Rachel's room empty. There was a moment of panic, old fears dying hard, before she found Rachel in Ethan's room, both adults still asleep, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years. Emma went back to Lucy's room. They're sleeping together now. Lucy looked up from the coloring book she'd been working on. Good. Daddy smiles more when Mama's around. She's not our Mama, Emma said automatically, then stopped. I mean, she could be, Lucy said seriously. If you want her to be. She takes care of us and makes good food and reads bedtime stories. That's what Mamas do. Emma considered this. Her real mother had died when she was a baby. She had no memories, just stories Marcus told that painted a saint he claimed Rachel could never measure up to. But Rachel was the only mother Emma had ever known, and Ethan was becoming the father Marcus had never been. Yeah, Emma said finally. She could be our mama, both of us. And Ethan's my daddy, and could be your daddy too. We're sisters now. We've been sisters, Lucy corrected, since the beginning. Downstairs they found Ethan making pancakes while Rachel set the table, the two adults moving around each other with the ease of long practice. When the girls appeared, both adults smiled. Morning, girls, Rachel said. Who wants chocolate chips in their pancakes? The months that followed were a process of becoming a family instead of just playing one, becoming partners instead of just pretending, becoming people who chose each other every day because the alternative was unthinkable. Marcus exercised his visitation rights, though Emma never looked forward to those weekends. But the supervised visits meant she was protected from his manipulations, and gradually Marcus seemed to realize that fighting wouldn't get him what he wanted. He'd never be the father Emma needed, but he could be present in her life without being destructive. Ethan's new work schedule meant he was home for dinners, for homework help, for the daily chaos of raising two girls who'd gone from strangers to sisters. Rachel picked up more shifts at the diner, but without the crushing pressure of trying to fund a custody battle. The house filled with the detritus of childhood, art projects and science fair displays, and the eternal mystery of where all the socks went. 6 months after the final custody hearing, Ethan and Rachel sat on their back porch, now truly theirs, and watched the girls play in the yard they'd finally gotten around to landscaping. The fairy village had been rebuilt into something more elaborate, complete with a bridge made from popsicle sticks and a pond fashioned from an old pie tin. "I've been thinking," Rachel said, "about what we tell people when they ask how we met." "We tell them the truth," Ethan said. "We met at a diner. You were having the worst night of your life. I offered to help. Everything else followed from there." That's a very simplified version of events. Yeah, but it's true. All the best love stories start with one person seeing another person who needs help and choosing to step in. "Is this a love story?" Rachel asked, though she was smiling. "Isn't it?" Rachel leaned over, kissed him softly. "Yeah, I think it is. It's not the story I expected to be living, but it's the one I needed." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughters, because Emma had started calling Ethan Dad sometime around month 4. Hesitant at first, then with increasing confidence. Create worlds of imagination where anything was possible. Ethan thought about the night at Mel's diner, about Rachel falling apart at the counter, about the split-second decision to walk over and offer help to a stranger. He thought about how that decision had changed everything, how it had brought life back into a house that had been more tomb than home. "I love you," he said, because it was true, and because he could say it now without fear. Rachel's eyes went soft. "I love you too, even though you leave your socks on the floor and forget to put the toilet seat down. And you reorganize my tools every time you clean the garage. Someone has to. Your organizational system is chaos." "It's organized chaos." They were bickering like an old married couple, which made sense because they were a married couple, even if the path to marriage had been anything but traditional. What had started as a desperate legal maneuver had become the realest thing in both their lives. That evening, after the girls were in bed, Ethan found Rachel looking at photo albums, not his old ones of Sarah, but new ones she'd started making. Pictures of their blended family, documentation of the life they were building. There was the first day of school for both girls, Emma and Lucy standing together in new clothes, backpacks too big for their small frames. There was Halloween, when they'd gone as characters from the same book, because Lucy had insisted sisters should coordinate costumes. There was Thanksgiving, their first real holiday together, the table crowded with friends and makeshift family. "I want to add to this," Rachel said, holding up a recent photo of all 4 of them at the park, windblown and laughing. "I want more memories, more moments, more proof that this is real." "It's real," Ethan assured her. "Every bit of it." "I know, but I want—" She paused, gathering courage for what she needed to say. "I want to renew our vows, actually mean them this time. Have a real wedding with the girls there and our friends, and not just a courthouse ceremony we rush through to meet a deadline." Ethan stared at her. "You want to marry me again?" "I want to marry you for real this time. I want to stand up in front of people and promise to love you, to choose you, to build this life with you. I want Emma and Lucy to be part of it, to see that families can be made and chosen and real even when they don't start traditionally." "When?" "I don't know. Spring, maybe? When the weather's nice and we can have it in the backyard with everyone who helped us get here." Rachel looked nervous. "Unless you think it's silly, we're already legally married. Maybe it's redundant." Ethan kissed her quiet. "It's not silly. It's perfect. Let's get married again, for real this time, and mean every word." They planned the renewal for April on a Saturday when the cherry trees in the backyard were in full bloom. It wasn't elaborate, just a simple ceremony with a minister who understood that sometimes the best love stories had complicated origins. Mrs. Chen was there, and Mel from the diner, and Patricia Chen, who'd fought for them in court. Ethan's crew from the construction site showed up in uncomfortable suits, and Rachel's friends from work came bearing casseroles and well wishes. Emma and Lucy stood up with them, both in matching purple dresses because purple was still Emma's favorite color, and Lucy had declared that sisters should match for important events. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Lucy raised her hand solemnly. "I object to this taking so long because I'm hungry and there's cake." The laughter that rippled through their assembled friends felt like benediction. This was family, messy and imperfect and absolutely right. Ethan and Rachel exchanged new vows, these ones written themselves instead of recited from a standard script. Rachel promised to choose Ethan every day, to build a life of trust and partnership, to never let fear silence her voice. Ethan promised to protect their family, to show up every single day, to love Rachel not despite her scars, but including them because they made her who she was. When they kissed, the girls cheered. When they turned to face their friends as a family, all four of them holding hands, the applause was genuine and warm. This was how it was supposed to work, Ethan thought. Not the fairy tale version where everything was easy, but the real version where you fought for what mattered and built something worth keeping from the ruins of what came before. That night, after the guests had left and the yard was littered with the evidence of celebration, Ethan stood on the back porch one last time. Rachel joined him, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me that night at the diner, for stepping in when you didn't have to, for giving me and Emma a home, a family, a second chance at everything." "Thank you for letting me," Ethan said, "for trusting me when trust was the hardest thing you could give, for choosing this life with me even when it scared you." They stood together in the darkness, listening to the house settling around them, to the soft sounds of their daughters sleeping upstairs. This was peace, Ethan realized. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of people worth struggling for. He'd lost Sarah and thought he'd lost his capacity for love. Rachel had lost her safety and thought she'd lost her ability to trust. Emma had nearly lost her mother. Lucy had needed a family that was more than just the two of them. And somehow in a rain-soaked diner on a Tuesday night, the universe had conspired to bring them all together. What started as a desperate lie had become the most honest thing in any of their lives. A family built on choice and commitment, and the radical decision to show up for each other every single day. In the end, that's what family was. Not blood or circumstance or legal documents, though those could be part of it. Family was choosing to stand together when everything tried to pull you apart. Family was building a home out of broken pieces and making it whole through sheer stubborn love. Ethan had stood at a counter in a diner and offered his name, his house, his stability to a stranger. In return, he'd received so much more. A wife, a daughter, a reason to remember that life was for living, not just surviving. Rachel had accepted help from someone she didn't know and risked everything on trust that had been shattered before. In return, she'd found safety, partnership, and proof that not all men who offered help expected ownership in return. Emma had gained a father who chose her, a sister who loved her, and a home where she was safe to be a child instead of a pawn in adult games. And Lucy had gained the mother she barely remembered losing and a sister to share her world with. 4 people, strangers or nearly so, who'd become the family they all needed. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when old fears crept in, still struggles to navigate. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. As spring turned to summer and summer to fall, the house on Maple Street rang with laughter and argument and the beautiful chaos of a family learning to be family. The guest room became a proper office. The yard got a swing set. The refrigerator accumulated layers of artwork and report cards and permission slips. And every night, Ethan and Rachel fell asleep in each other's arms, grateful for diner breakdowns and split-second decisions and the stubborn refusal to let good people lose just because the system measured them wrong. They'd stood in front of a judge who asked if they were really a family, and they'd said yes, knowing it was a lie that aspired to truth. Now, when people asked if they were really a family, they said yes, knowing it was the truest thing they'd ever spoken. This was their life. Built from desperation, forged in determination, and sustained by the simple daily choice to love each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And every Tuesday night, they still went to Mel's diner. Sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with the girls. They always sat in the same booth, always ordered too many fries, always left generous tips. Because that diner was where it started. Where a stranger became a husband, where a waitress became a wife, where a custody battle became a love story, where 4 lost people found their way home.